isang rehistradong botante para sa May 9, 2022 elections? Narito ang 12 bagay na hindi mo dapat gawin bago, sa araw mismo at pagkatapos ng eleksyon batay sa Omnibus Election Code at sa mga panuntunan ng Commission on Elections. Huwag ibenta ang iyong boto. Ang pagbili ng boto o pagbenta ng boto ay mahigpit na ipinagbabawal sa ilalim ng Omnibus Election Code. Ito ay may kaukulang parusa na pagkakakulong mula 1 hanggang 6 na taon, pagkadiskwalipika sa pagsilbi sa isang pampublikong posisyon at pagkawala ng karapatang bumoto. Ang isang partidong politikal na mapapatunayang bumili o nagbenta ng boto ay pamumultahin na hindi bababa sa 10,000 piso. Huwag pagpustahan ang resulta ng eleksyon. Ang kahit na anong pera o bagay na may halaga na itinaya sa pustahan para sa resulta ng eleksyon ay mapupunta sa estado. Huwag pilitin o takutin ang iyong mga subordinates, kabilang ang mga miyembro ng parokya o simbahan, mga kasambahay, o mga nangungupahan para ikampanya o iboto o hindi iboto ang isang kandidato. Huwag pilitin o takutin sa direkta o hindi direktang paraan ang kahit na sinong opisyal o kawani para sa eleksyon. Huwag magdala ng baril sa labas ng iyong bahay o lugar ng trabaho. Kahit na ikaw ang may permit to carry, kailangan mo pa rin ng sulat mula sa COMELEC na nagsasaad na ikaw ay maaaring magbitbit ng baril sa labas. Huwag bumoto ng higit sa isang beses sa isang eleksyon. Huwag bumoto kung ikaw ay hindi rehistradong botante. Ang double voting o mas kilala sa tawag na flying voter ay may kaukulang parusa ng pagkabilanggo ng hanggang 6 na taon at multa na hanggang 10,000 piso. Huwag bumoto bilang kahalili ng isang rehistradong botante kahit pa may pahintulot. Huwag gumamit ng ibang balota maliban sa ibibigay ng Board of Election Inspectors. Ipinagbabawal din ang pagkakaroon ng higit sa isang official ballot. Huwag pikturan ang iyong balota. Hindi rin pinapayagan ang mag-selfie kasama ng iyong balota. Huwag magbitbit ng nakamamatay na armas sa loob ng presinto kung saan ka boboto at sa loob ng radius na 100 metro mula sa presinto sa araw ng eleksyon. Huwag magbenta, mag-alok, bumili, maghain, o kumuha ng alak at iba pang nakakalasing ng inumin 1 araw bago ang eleksyon at sa mismong araw ng eleksyon. Ang mga hotels at establisimento lamang na pinapayagan ng Department of Tourism na magsilbi ng alak sa mga dayuhang turista ang maaaring di masaklawan ng liquor ban. Huwag magdaos o makilahok sa sabong, boxing, karera ng kabayo, hay-alay at iba pang kahalintulad na laro sa araw ng eleksyon. Bawat boto ay mahalaga at ang isang boto ay maaaring magresulta sa 6 na taon na maayos na pamamalakad ng gobyerno at matatag na ekonomiya o 6 na taon na talamang ang korupsyon, mataas ang porsyento ng mga walang trabaho at mas laganap na kahirapan. Protektahan mo ang iyong kinabukasan sa pamamagitan ng hindi pagbenta ng iyong boto. Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Painit ng painit ang nalalapit na eleksyon. Pero hindi dapat kalimutan na tayo ay nasa gitna pa ng pandemya at may mga nagsusulputang variants ng COVID-19 na posibleng mas malala. Pakikipagkamay, beso-beso, selfies, may mahigpit na paalala si Commission on Election spokesman James Jimenez.
Well, napakahalaga kasi no, na panatiliin nating ang seguridad ng ating mga mamamayan. Alam naman natin na during the campaign period, talagang ang posibleng tamaan ng COVID, no, dahil dito nga sa ongoing na pandemic natin, ay hindi naman yung mga kandidato o yung kanilang mga campaign staff, kundi yung mga taong nag-a-attend sa kanilang mga rally. Kaya napakahalaga na pangalagaan natin ang kanilang kalusugan. And this responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the candidates and their campaign teams.
Narito ang mga panuntunang itinakda ng COMELEC sa ilalim ng Resolution number 10732 kung paano matitiyak na ang mga campaign activities para sa May 9, 2022 na eleksyon ay hindi maging COVID super spreader events. Lahat ng kandidato at kanilang mga campaign support staff ay itinuturing na authorized persons outside of residence or APOR kahit ano paman ang alert level system at kanilang vaccination status. Ang face-to-face sorties, rallies, conventions, motorcades, caravans at meeting de avance ay pinapayagan lamang sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng alert levels 1, 2 at 3. Ang mga batang maedad 17 pababa at mga nakatatandang maedad 66 pataas at ang may mga kondisyong medikal, kabilang na ang mga buntis, ay bawal dumalo sa mga ganitong aktibidad.
At huwag nating kakalimutan yung mga selfie, mga pagkamay-kamay, pagyakap-yakap, beso-beso. Saglit lang yan. No? Wala pang ilang segundo yan, tapos na yan, lumipas na. Pero pag kayo ay nagkasakit, dahil dyan, pag kayo ay nagka-COVID, mahabang gamutan yan, mahabang bubuluin ng inyong kalusugan yan. At hindi lang yan, pati ng inyong finances. Napakamahal magkasakit ngayon. So, wag nating isasang-alang sa kakunting enjoyment yung mas mahabang problema ng COVID.
Ang indoor campaign ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 4. Mga outdoor na aktibidad lamang na nasa 30% capacity ang pinapayagan. Kahit na anong meeting, convention, rally, motorcade, caravan o meeting de avance ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 5. Ang mga kandidato o ang kanilang mga campaign support staff ay pinagbabawalang gawin ang mga sumusunod. Huwag pumasok sa pribadong pamamahay habang nagsasagawa ng house-to-house campaign kahit pa pumayag ang may-ari ng bahay. Bawal ang pakipagkamay, pagyakap, beso-beso, o kahit na anong physical contact sa kandidato o mga kasama nila at sa publiko. Bawal ang makipag-selfie o pagkuha ng litrato na lalabag sa social distancing protocols. Bawal mamahagi ng pagkain o inumin upang maiwasang magtanggal ng face mask ang mga tao.
Ang ating kalusugan at kasiguruhan sa panahon ng pandemya ay nakasalalay sa individual na pananagutan or individual responsibility. Kailangan tayo maging responsible tayo sa sarili nating mga gawa. Kung tayo ay magbe-behave in a safe manner, magiging safe tayo lahat. Kung tayo mismo ang lalabag sa mga protocols na itinakda ng ating health authorities, talagang tataas ang tsansa ng infection, no, in our population. So, kailangan doon sa mga botante, doon sa mga nanonood ng mga rally, kayo mismo, magkusa kayo na huwag ninyong gagawin yan.
Tandaan, ang paglabag sa mga health protocols sa mga aktibidad na may kinalaman sa eleksyon ay itinuturing na election offense. Ang mga lalabag sa panuntunang itinakda ay nahaharap sa hanggang 6 na taong pagkabilanggo at multa na hindi bababa sa 10,000 piso. Maaari ding mawala ang karapatang bumoto pag ikaw ay nahatulang guilty sa paglabag sa mga protocols. Tunay na mahirap ang pangangampanya para sa eleksyon, pero sa gitna ng patuloy na public health crisis, ito ay higit pang naging masalimuot. Ang mga kandidato, ang kanilang campaign staff at ang publiko ay marapat na piliin lagi ang kaligtasan at kalusugan una sa lahat. Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Kung ikaw ay nakakita ng aktibidad na lumalabag sa mga naturang panuntunan sa iyong lugar, huwag mag-atubiling magsumbong sa COMELEC sa kanilang Facebook, Twitter at mobile.
Nagkainit ang eleksyon, pero dili nato kalimtan nga anaa pa kita sa tunga sa pandemya ug aduna pay bag-o ug mas mapintas nga variant sa COVID-19. Paglamano,
Kada eleksyon, pumipili ang sambayanang Pilipino ng susunod na lider ng bansa, ng taong magtatakda ng plano at polisiya para sa 6 na taon ng ating kinabukasan. Pero ano nga ba ang hinahanap natin sa isang leader? Sa anong mga kwalifikasyon natin titimbangin ang mga kandidatong nanliligaw para sa matamis nating boto?
Dapat ang leader natin matapang, walang uurungan.
Ang gusto kong kandidato ay yung magaling sumayaw at entertaining.
Gusto ko yung matikas, yung magaling magdala ng sarili.
Sana yung susunod na presidente mayaman na para hindi na mangurakot.
Alam mo bang base sa ating konstitusyon, 5 lang ang kwalifikasyon para sa mga nagnanais tumakbong presidente ng Pilipinas? Una, kailangan natural-born citizen ng Pilipinas. Ikalawa, kailangang rehistradong botante. Ikatlo, marunong bumasa at magsulat. Ikaapat, nasa edad na 40 sa araw ng eleksyon. At ikalima, residente ng Pilipinas sa loob ng 10 taon bago ang eleksyon. Simple, hindi ba? Walang itinatakdang kwalifikasyon base sa edukasyon, work experience o kayamanan. Pero simple nga bang tunay ang mga dapat nating hanapin sa susunod na leader ng ating bansa? Ayon kay Commission on Election spokesperson James Jimenez, marami pa tayong pwede at dapat hanapin.
Very basic o payak ang ating requirements. Ibig pa sabihin nito na yan lang ang kailangan nating hanapin? Siyempre hindi. Yan ang tinatawag natin minimum. Pwede kang maghanap ng mas lampas pa dyan. No? Halimbawa, maghanap ka ng taong merong integridad. Gawin mong necessary ingredient yan. Gawin mong kalakip yan ng pagpili mo kung sino magiging pangulo. Kailangan may integridad, kailangan may kakayanan, kailangan magaling, kailangan matalino, at kailangan nagsasabi ng katotohanan sa bayan. Kasi ang pipiliin natin ay hindi lang basta-bastang tao. Leader natin ang pipiliin natin. Leader natin na bibigyan natin ng napakalaking kapangyarihan. Kapangyarihan over our lives, over our livelihoods, over our country. So, bagaman maliit or payak lamang ang requirements ng konstitusyon, kailangan tayo bilang botante, pag boboto na tayo, kailangan medyo mas mataas naman ang standards natin.
Tunay na marami tayong dapat hanapin na katangian sa susunod na leader ng bayan. Ngayon, higit kailanman, kailangan nating maging mapanuri.
Sa tingin ko bilang botante, kailangan maging mas mapanuri tayo dahil hindi biro ang halalan. Hindi biro ang hinihingi niya sa atin ng mga kandidato niyan. Gusto nila maging leader natin. Gusto nila magkaroon ng kapangyarihan sa ating kabuhayan, sa ating buhay, sa ating bansa. At dahil dyan, kailangan natin maging mapanuri. Kung jowa mo nga lang pinadadaan mo sa butas ng karayom bago mo sagutin, paano pa kaya yung mga elected leaders natin na may tunay na kapangyarihan sa iyo?
Sabi nga ni Director Jimenez, kung kinikilatis nating maigi ang isang potensyal na jowa bago ibigay ang matamis nating oo, mas lalong higit na dapat nating kilatisin ang mga nanliligaw para sa makapangyarihan nating boto.
Hindi pa kami pwedeng bumoto
boto. Kaya sana pumili kayo ng tama para sa aming kinabukasan.
Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Hi, Kurt. Shout out sa Southern Luzon State University. And of course, Manuel S. Enverga University Foundation. Ang Southern Luzon po State University ang last natin na contact, and thanks to you, Kurt, and syempre sa Dean of the College of Arts and Science ng SLU, dahil tumugon sila sa ating invitation, Joyce, no? Last minute. Kasi nga, ang purpose nga natin, Joyce, mas marami, di ba? Mapaabot natin itong training program natin. At true enough, Joyce, true enough.
Over 100 na, Ariel. Ang dami.
112, ano? Oo. Sige, yung bawasan muna natin yung interference natin para magkaintindihan tayo na, kasi we're all excited to do this. And we're bringing it back to Luzon kasi yung una namin na leg in January this year was Luzon NCR. So nag-Mindanao kami, nag-Visayas. So this time around, Luzon po kami. So we're doing the Scholastic Press Outreach Program by the Philippine Press Institute whole year round. At ito po ay isa sa mga components, Joyce, ng ating institutional projects natin, no? In partnership with the Hans Seidel Foundation. Thanks to you, Hans Seidel Foundation. And dyan, kaway-kaway kay Attorney Guts and Carol and Mike, sa lahat ng ating friends sa Hans Seidel Foundation. And speaking of, please do not forget to visit the pages of Hans Seidel Foundation and also of the PPI for more updates on our activities every month. Just to let you know na ang aming programa sa PPI, hindi lang limited sa Scholastic. So di ba, Joyce, every week meron po kami.
Media Info Literacy.
Oo, meron kaming ito, example ito ng Media Information Literacy, tapos meron pa kaming roundtable, meron pa kaming training program, other programs that are not limited to media practitioners. So ito po yung isang component or program ng PPI na pasok po ang mga educators and students natin. And as I said, thank you very much sa Southern Luzon State University and Manuel S. Enverga University Foundation para po sa ating programa ngayong hapon na to. So nararapat namang, Joyce, mangulan-ngulan ba where you are right now?
Oh yes, raining cats and dogs in Makati.
Masarap lang nasa loob ng bahay, di ba? Perfect time, no, to do this online activity natin. Pero at this point, humingi po tayo magdasal po tayo, no, a little bit of a prayer for ourselves and for other people and for our community and the nation as well. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, Almighty Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for giving us another work and opportunity to be with our stakeholders. Ika nga, ang tinatawag namin na ally, which is the academe. At Lord, nagpapasalamat po kami sa pagdala po sa aming participants ngayong hapon na ito inside the Zoom meeting room, at saka yung pong nanonood sa amin live via Facebook streaming. Kami po ay nananampalataya. We always pray for healing and deliverance and redemption as we look forward to the forthcoming elections. Give us wisdom and also good health, Lord, to get us by every day. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Hello. Magandang hapon uli sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Ariel Sabelino. I'm the Executive Director and Trustee of the Philippine Press Institute. Joining me today is also the PPI Seminar Director and News Editor of Manila Standard, Joyce Pañares, who's going to moderate and host our Luzon leg of the Scholastic Press Outreach Program. And also joining us today, Joyce, ating training team. Hindi natin mabubuo ito, Joyce, na wala sila Kier, sila Ate Bess, sila Sheila, sila Priscilla, sila Rog, sila Risa, na tumulong-tulong para mabuo ang ating programa ngayon. At kami po sa PPI, on behalf of the Board of Trustees ng PPI, kami po ay mapalad na makasama kayo ngayon at kami po ay magsusumikap para ibahagi pa ang aming mga training programs throughout the year. Ayan. Hi, Ma'am Din Sheila. Hello, Din Sheila Manzanilla. Good morning po sa iyo, Ma'am. And again, thank you very much, Hans Seidel Foundation. I now call the resident representative of Hans Seidel Foundation to the Philippines, Attorney Guts Heineke. Good afternoon, Attorney Guts.
Hi, good afternoon, Ariel, and good afternoon, Joyce. Joyce, I'm a little bit, not shocked, but speechless because I'm also in Makati and no rain and no dogs and no cats and nothing at all here.
Now I remember, Attorney Guts, what Joyce said. When somebody tells you that it's raining, So you have to open your window and look out if it's raining, right?
That is part of the verification
Yes,
process.
later, exciting.
Very important.
That's exciting part.
But it was
Okay,
really raining cats and dogs earlier.
yeah,
God.
but where you are, it will come later, probably an hour after.
Yeah, currently it's in tranches.
At least I can confirm when Carol went out for lunch at 11:30, 12 o'clock, there it was heavy rain. Yes.
Yeah.
But now everything seems to be dry.
Okay. Yes, your message, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Ariel. Dear ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the German Hans-Seidel Foundation, welcome to this
After nitong...
afternoon.
Hindi, pwede pala akong tumayo. Meron.
Ay, Joyce. Si Joyce, bosses ni Joyce. Sorry.
On behalf of the German Hans-Seidel Foundation, welcome everybody to our Scholastic program this afternoon. Hans-Seidel Foundation is a German political foundation. We are an NGO. We are here in the Philippines for more than 40 years, and it's a little bit our goal worldwide to build up democracy and good governance. In the Philippines, we have got various partners. We are even working together with the PNP, the Philippine Public Safety College, the Department of Justice. But in these days, one of our most important partners is the Philippine Press Institute. Why? Because, as I have said, it's our goal to build up democracy and good governance. And in order to inform the people what's going on about good governance and democracy, you need journalists. And I think these days, in the election days, it's a heavy challenge for the journalists because they need to inform the whole population what is going on. And in order to avoid also fake news and misleading rumors and everything so on. I mean, I'm lucky I'm a foreigner here in the Philippines. I don't have to comment everything what is going on now about election campaigning and yes, and everything what I see in television. But I see that the task and the challenge for journalists these days here in the Philippines is really high. And therefore, congratulations to the PPI for organizing this activity, for organizing a lot of activities in order to improve in order to help and support journalists in the Philippines. From my side as well, thank you very much to the Southern Luzon State University in Quezon province. So I think you are in Lucena, in Suarez country. Yes, thank you very much for organizing this and participating in this program this afternoon, because I think it's really needed that we inform the young students about good journalism and good journalism standards. And thank you very much also to you, to Lucena. Having said that, I think I'm at the end. Please enjoy this afternoon conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Attorney. Surely we will truly enjoy, and I promise, di ba lagi na sinasabi, Joyce, itong Scholastic natin, probably one of the more exciting programs that the PPI usually conduct, kasi engaging conversation itong training na to or seminar na to na ginagawa ng PPI. And speaking of PPI, if you're not familiar with the PPI, we're the oldest professional media organization in the country for print, having been conceived in 1964. If you want to know more about the PPI, we're just a click away. It's www.fieldpressinstitute.net. We also have a news platform powered by HSF. It's anything, any reportage on the pandemic and also on the election. So it's www.ppinewscommons.net. Yun po ang pwede niyong bisitahin every now and then for more updates. Also, as I said, visit the pages of PPI and HSF. At the end of the program, we will be flashing on the chat room the evaluation from our survey questionnaire so that you guys will let us know how you felt about the training program so that we can do better in our next training programs. Okay. In exchange, you will also get your ito tinatawag natin your hard-earned certificate of participation. I'm pretty sure that's also very important to you as participants ng PPI because you'll be holding it as your, not only as a token, but I think it's a stamp of prestige from the Philippine Press Institute and Hans Seidel Foundation. All right, binanggit ni Attorney Guts, unprecedented in the history of PPI that we've actually done more during the pandemic, not because we're seeing you in small boxes, but I think gives us more time and less travel because no travel. So we've been doing a lot of activities online. We've been raring to see a lot of our participants, especially journalists, na tinitrain namin every now and then, but also you as educators and teachers also, and hopefully next time. Actually, sabi nga namin, Joyce, di ba, ang tagal na namin gustong pumunta ng Lucena. Di ba, Kurt? Si Kurt kasi, okay, si Kurt, your educator also, I'm pretty sure teacher niyo din si Kurt. He's active in journalism training ng PPI at matagal namin pinag-uusapan nito na why don't we bring any of the programs ng PPI in Lucena or in Quezon? And true enough, sabi ni Kurt, we need that, sir. Sabi niya ganun. So sabi niya, let's contact Manuel SN and Verga University Foundation. Tapos last minute nga, pasensya na po din Sheila, pero saludo kami siya, talagang approve ka agad sa inyo. Siguro nga talagang nakitaan yung importansya ng ating training program ngayon at talagang makikinabang naman yung mga estudyante natin. As I said, those who cannot enter the Zoom meeting room can also watch us live by FB streaming. At kung hindi po mapapanood talaga, you can also watch it through our PPI YouTube channel. Ipopost namin yung link doon so that you can watch the whole proceedings once again. Ayun, madami na kaming training sa PPI at bagamat ang dami naming diskusyon about media conditions. This time, papaigtingin pa natin yung diskusyon na ito. Last year, the theme of the Scholastic Press Outreach Program was all about media information literacy and democracy resilience. May pinagkaiba pero magkarugtong po yun. As you look forward, as I said, to the forthcoming elections and also your exercise your right to suffrage, especially first-time voters. Pero ngayon, titingnan natin, bagamat nag-renew na din sa mga teachers ninyo, ano bang pinagdadaanan ng isang sektor ng Pilipinas, the media sector, pero amongst all sectors na dumaranas ng difficulties this time, the pandemic, ongoing pa rin, hindi natin alam kung kailan matatapos, pero we're hoping that, the situation easing up, and when things get back to normal, probably next year, we're going to make the rounds physically, face-to-face na ang mga training programs ng PPA workshops namin and other activities. I was looking forward to it. Sinabi ko nga kanina, kung ang isang sector like the media ang nakaranas ng hagupit, sinabi Prof. Ipe, di ba? Hagupit ng pandemyang ito, amongst other problems facing the country. Ito yung panahon na pag-usapan namin with you, ano bang pinagdadaanan ng journalist natin? I know that a lot of you know your local journalists, and I'm hoping that you also read your local newspapers, hindi lang yung mga national newspapers, but I think you really have to support local journalists. That's what PPI aims to do, and isa sa mga objective talaga is to intensify readership, mapaprint pa yan or online, pero really support excellent journalism. Wag na natin patagalin pa, Joyce, I don't want to go ahead of the discussions, but let me just call the PPI Seminar Director and News Editor of Manila Standard, Ms. Joyce Pañares. But before that, bago pa pala yan, Joyce, na-excite tuloy ako, Joyce. Ito pa, mabuti na lang, bumalik yung train of thought ko. Kasi wala nga si Jonald. I'd like to profusely thank again Southern Luzon State University for the last-minute approval of our training program with you, Ma'am Dean Sheila. And at this point, let me please welcome the Dean of the College of Arts of Science and Sciences of Southern Luzon State University, Dean Sheila Manzanilla. Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon to you, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon po, Sir Ariel. This is the first time that we have met, and we were invited here in this event by Kurt. Okay, Kurt is a graduate of Southern Luzon State University. Hey. And Southern Luzon State University is located at Lucban, Quezon.
Lucban.
Okay, yes po. So again, good afternoon to all the media practitioners in our midst, our partners from the Philippine Press Institute, our organizer, supported by Hans Seidel Foundation Philippines, faculty and students from colleges and universities, Southern Luzon State University's faculty and students from Bachelor of Arts in Communication, and our distinguished speakers for today. Misinformation destroys trust, And when you destroy trust, you destroy the bonds that hold society together. Today, as we face the new normal in this pandemic, proliferation of disinformation and misinformation are slowly destroying the core of our society. Thus, an opportunity to shed light and rebuild our trust in the media is indeed timely. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be part of this forum, Midya and Pandemya, Coping with and Covering the Health Crisis, which is a program for educators and students. Guided by the maxims that will be shared by our speakers, I believe that those are blinded by rehashed information and glorified lies, which worsen the crisis that we are in right now. The reason why people are not opting for vaccination, why others still think that the crisis is an imagined crisis to control the entire world, why we believe that the pandemic ended and that every news articles posted in social media were perceived as real without checking the sources and the veracity of data. We will eventually realize that we have the power to save others from this fake information and rely on the new media as the epitome of truth. We'll be able to discern what we have to believe in. Even Sonnenberg remarked that the only difference between being uninformed and misinformed is that one is your choice and the other is theirs. In the end, let us choose to seek for the truth. That is our only choice to educate others, to save us from the pit of ignorance and arrogance. Good afternoon to all of you, and again, maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Dean Sheila Joyce. Ang ganda ng binanggit ni Dean Sheila, no? Isa sa mga component din talaga pag-usapan natin about this information, amongst others. At binanggit niya ng kalaghan talaga ng to debunk lies and deceptions,
Yes.
diba? Sama-sama tayo dito, hindi lang tayo bilang journalist, media practitioners. Pero as I said nga, Joyce, diba, ang biggest ally talaga natin ng media, yung academe, kasi sila nag-mold the next generation of journalists, content providers. Sila yung magtatama ng mali, diba? Tulong-tulong pa tayo dito. Shout out tayo, Joyce. School papers in attendance are the Luzonian, the Junior Luzonian, and the Kingfisher. Hindi tayo sure kung isang school
Ariel, we have 157 now.
Yeah, wow.
Ang bilis dumami.
Meron din tayo, Joyce, sa Sacred Heart College, na tinitingnan ko. Zero later on, pwede natin tingnan kung sino pa yung magjo-join sa atin. But syempre yung Manuel S. Enverga University Foundation, SLSU, andito na po sila kasi sila yung partners natin sa ating forum. Joyce, ikaw na. It's about time that you start the ball rolling.
Thank you. Kanina, after that premature.
Kaya.
Sa akin. But, before I call our first speaker, I think I'd like to discuss lang a few points first, Siguro update lang sa ating mga kasama today. First, the COMELEC has formed an anti-fake news task force. This is something new. It's really something na first of its kind. Wala pa tayong ganito sa atin. Although ang tunguhin lang nila is really the fake news about COMELEC, hindi pa fake news in general. It's a good starting point. I mean, COMELEC is now pushing back. It's fighting back against disinformation and misinformation. And then Facebook.
Facebook, I was about to say.
Yes,
Grabe, nag-purge ang dami. Sabay-sabay na.
Po talaga yung nangyari. Over 400 accounts
Yes.
were removed. This comes, of course, 2 months after Twitter also removed over 300 accounts. So nakikita natin that we're all, our stakeholders, even the social media platforms, are doing their part in this fight against disinformation and misinformation. And gusto ko lang susugan yung sinabi ni Ariel. Truly very important yung partnership natin sa academe kasi doon po talaga nagsisimula yung media literacy, information literacy, how they consume the news, how they make use of the news that they encounter, di ba? The information. And how to sift through what is misinformation, disinformation, and what is real information, real, verified, accurate information, just like what Guts did earlier when he checked out of his window and looked kung uulan din ba sa area niya. So at this point, hindi ko na patatagalin. This is an ongoing study. In fact, this is now the part 2 of the study, doing as a qualitative qualitative part na po sila. And I think over 60 journalists ba, Prof. Ipe, ang kasama for the qualitative. At may mga
30 lang pala.
30 pala. Yeah, and there are initial responses already that will be presented. So napaka-exciting yung discussion. I'd like to call Professor Felipe Salvosa II. He's the Vice President of JSAP and the program head of the journalism program of the University of Santo Tomas to discuss reporting in the time of the new normal, journalism amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Prof. Ipe, good afternoon.
Prof. Ipe. Ayan.
Parang naka-freeze si Prof. Ipe. Baka meron lang tech glitch.
Exciting nga yung Joyce, yung yung study niya kasi as you said nga track 2 na sila no, qualitative.
Yes.
And this time they're surveying or part of their tawag ito, yung effort nila is to interview journalists, community journalists, 15 community journalists, tapos meron din 15 the national media, which we attended yung orientation meeting.
Yes.
At sabi ko nga, by April or May, May to be exact, mag-iiba na yung presentation ni Prof. Ipe kasi meron na talagang results of the study. But also in May, we're going to launch the study itself. So it's going to be a big event, di ba?
While we're waiting for Prof. Ipe, baka we can invite everyone. Ayan na. Very quickly lang, let's invite everyone on May 2 for the World Press Freedom Day. Magkakaroon po ng ganap, syempre, ang PPI in partnership with JSAP and HSF. So, attend po kayo nun. Please check our social media accounts for the details.
Roundtable mo pa, you'll be hosting it this month.
We'll have a roundtable on the 3rd week of April, Wednesday.
That's April 20. April 20.
We will be discussing surveys, election surveys.
Yan, exciting.
Ang tanong natin dyan, na-survey na ba kayo?
Na-survey ka na ba? Ako hindi.
Kasi ako hindi rin. Wala rin akong kilala na survey pa. But anyway, thank you. And without further ado, I'd present to you, Prof. Ipe. Hi, Prof.
Hello. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon na ako po ay makapag-present ng aming study na aming ginagawa under the auspices of the University of Santo Tomas. So, isi-share ko lang po ang aking screen. So, okay. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, Prof.
Okay, so ang title ho ng aking presentation ay Reporting in the New Normal, Journalism Amid the COVID-19 Pandemic. So this study, of course, presents data gathered from surveys and interviews with Filipino journalists. Pero ang pag-aaral po na ito ay aming ginagawa as part of an international network of journalism educators and researchers. Ito po yung Global Risk Journalism Hub. Pwede niyo pong bisitahin ang aming website sa globalriskjournalismhub.com. This is a network of more than 60 researchers from 8 regions in the world. And we were formed to investigate the news reporting of globalized crisis issues. So we want to do collaborative projects that transcend national boundaries. We want to open spaces for dialogue and debate regarding how best to improve the quality of journalism in the context of globalized digital data ecosystems. So this network is headed by a researcher based in Australia, Dr. Ingrid Volkmer, head of the International Digital Policy Lab in Australia. She's based in the University of Melbourne. Now, I belong to the South and Southeast Asia Regional Group, headed by a Malaysian communication scholar and political commentator, Dr. Sarah Chinasamy. And we have members from India, Nepal, Thailand, and of course the Philippines. I am with another UST colleague, Christian Esguerra, in this research project. So as mentioned by our seminar director, Ms. Joyce Pañares, The study is a two-track study. So the first involved a snapshot survey in Q1 of last year. And then the second part will involve qualitative interviews. So yung nabanggit kanina ni Joyce na 30 journalists. Okay. So what I'm going to do is give you an idea of what happened in the snapshot survey, no, and then talk to you about the second track of the study. Ngayon, our objective is just to show to you, mga future communications practitioners, what has been the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on journalism. No? So by no means should we view this as something that could discourage us from joining the profession. Ano? So marami mga issues now and we should be aware of them, but we should take these issues as a challenge for us, no, to improve it, no, when we join the industry in the future. No? So let's go to the snapshot survey. No? So the snapshot survey, the objectives are to look at the challenges faced by the journalists in covering the pandemic. No? We wanted to look at the role of disinformation amid the pandemic, the sources of information of journalists about COVID-19, the pressures faced by journalists in covering the pandemic. No? So yan ang mga tinanong namin sa mga sinurvey namin ng mga mamamahayag, no? Noong isang taon. Okay, globally, the entire snapshot survey had 744 respondents, no? And then the Southeast Asia Regional Group, where I belong, we were able to survey 175 respondents, out of which 32 or 18% were from the Philippines. So, purposive ang aming sampling dito, no? So hindi talaga siya random sampling, no? But what we wanted to do is to get their insights, no, and then have some baseline data in preparation for our qualitative track. So overall, no, well, I'm talking of the regional sample lang pala, no? So we had majority male respondents, no, 63%, and this is because of the overwhelmingly male respondents from India. Okay, so our reporters were basically covering stories that were national in scope, and then followed by local and regional reporters. Okay, we asked them what they would say the majority of their work was being published or aired on. Okay, so the biggest response was internet, online, and digital outlets, no, that includes web portals, aggregators, blogs, websites, social media. But if you combine the legacy media, mas malaki pa rin sila, no? Although individually, maliliit na lang sila. No? So we have print media 25%, TV 21%, and radio 6%. More than half of our respondents were reporters, no? So 52%. And then a fifth were editors, no? And then 6% were from management. Okay, 9 out of 10 of our respondents wrote stories about COVID-19. So we could say that they were, pwede natin sabihin na babad sila sa pag-cover ng pandemic at ng pandemic response, no? The response of the government to the pandemic. Okay, we asked them how they felt about their assignments, no, whether it was challenging overall, and then 8 out of 10 said in the region, 8 out of 10 felt that the coverage was challenging. And then nearly 7 out of 10 said they felt exposed to COVID. No? The statement that we asked them to rate their agreement on was, I feel personally exposed to COVID-19 in the course of my work. And then 7 out of 10 said they agreed or strongly agreed with that statement. And we found that 76% now had at least one colleague who had COVID, 76%. And then we asked them if their organization provided important health protection equipment for journalists, or the client if they were freelancers, no? And then in the region, ang sagot is 47% were provided protective gear. Yun ang nagsabi na they agreed or strongly agreed, no? Yun naman nagsabi ng disagree or strongly agreed, they were about a quarter. Ibig sabihin, about a quarter were not given protective gear. The others had no response, no? Okay, we also looked at the role of what they thought was the impact of this information on the COVID-19 coverage. No? First, we asked them if they had a good understanding of what this information is, and nearly 9 out of 10 said they agreed or strongly agreed with that statement, no? That they had a good understanding of what this information is. Alam nila kung ano ang konsepto ng this information. In fact, 6 out of 10 said that their organization had guidelines versus disinformation, okay? And then more than half have received training on the handling of this information. Ano? So, di ganun karami, no? But at least more than half ang nakatanggap ng training on how to handle this information. Now, we asked them whether this information was affecting their coverage of the pandemic and those of their fellow journalists, okay? And then we found that the highest responses were from the Philippines and Thailand. No, this is what we wanted to verify in our qualitative interview. So mataas ang response sa Pilipinas, 88%, followed by Thailand, 82%, and then Malaysia, 77%. Now sa Malaysia, based on our conversation with our Malaysian colleague, no, matindi rin ang disinformation doon. Now, only 17% no, said their organizations have been associated with this information. We asked them whether they felt that they had been accused of peddling this information. The answer was only 17%. Hindi ganun karami. No? Perhaps because of the guidelines on this information as well as training and the awareness on this information. Okay, we found in our snapshot survey that there was heavy dependence on government for information. Ano, hindi lang ito sa Pilipinas, no. Mataas ang level of dependence on the government, no, particularly in the Philippines. And we know that this has impact on the kind of information that we consume. Globally, dependence on the government, no, we need to say agreement or disagreement or strong agreement with the statement on whether they depended on the government for information. Globally, the response was 75%. No? Pero sa Philippines, 9 out of 10, 91%. No? And then followed by India at 87% and Malaysia at 82%. No? We asked them if they experienced restrictions. So the question was this: I have not been restricted from covering any aspect of the pandemic. The responses here were those who disagreed or strongly disagreed. No? And we found that in the Philippines, a third of journalists said they experienced restrictions. No? The highest proportion in the region, no? Followed by in India, 26%, no? And then Thailand at 18%. And of course, alam naman natin to, no, na in the middle of the pandemic, no, nag-impose sila ng mga vaccination requirements, no, and then prior to that, may mga accreditation requirements, no, mobility restrictions, no. Okay, we also asked them, no, about their trust, no, on the different sources of information, no, about COVID. And we found that trust in health experts was very high. Okay, so 9 out of 10, no, on health experts, and on the WHO 7 out of 10. No, so nung una when we were discussing this, we thought, is there any statistical significance doon sa pagkakaiba ng response? No, was trust in health experts higher than the WHO? No, so ako naman, I'm being careful and not to make a distinction kasi hindi naman random yung sample. No? I would say that both 7 out of 10 and 9 out of 10 could be considered to be very high trust. No? And we can say na wala talagang significant difference, no, between the two. But this is what we wanted to validate in our qualitative interviews. No. Okay, we also found that there was a high dependence on press releases, no, 77%. Perhaps this is because of the accessibility of press materials and handouts. No? Compared with social media, 49%, perhaps this is because of the unreliability and the prevalence of misinformation on social media. No? On scientific journals naman, perhaps because of the cost, no, involved in accessing the scientific plus the technical language involved, no, in scientific journals. So the journalists seem to have taken the line of release resistance, no, and dependent on press releases for their coverage. No. Okay. We also found that journalists now prefer the international media, no, as a source of news, 72%, 7 out of 10. Now, we wanted to know whether they try to balance coverage by interviewing marginalized sources, no? And we saw na a majority, no, of journalists in many countries did this, no? In fact, the Philippines have the highest proportion of journalists who said they had interviewed marginalized sources. No? 66% said they agreed or strongly agreed with this statement, followed by India at 60%, Thailand at 55%. Malaysia, 1 out of 2 journalists interviewed said they interviewed marginalized sources. Okay, we asked them whether there was no government pressure to publish information, no? Makita natin na sa Pilipinas 84% ang nagsabi na wala, no, walang government pressure, no. And then those who said yes, 13%, but hindi pare-pareho ang kwento, no, sa mga bansa dito sa Southeast Asia region, ano. Sa India 32% sabi meron, no. And then Malaysia ganon, no, 45%, no, mayroong mga government pressure, no? So halo, no, it's a mixed bag. Now we found that in the middle of the pandemic, no, in the outbreak of the pandemic, we found that may takot, no, yung mga journalists, no, that their news organization will experience financial stress, no. This was at par with the global result, 63%, no. Ang tinanong namin is whether they fear that their news organization was going to experience financial difficulties because of the pandemic, no. 35% agreed, no. 25% strongly agreed, no. 6 out of 10. And then this fear was strongest in the Philippines at 81%, no. So this validates the earlier report by PPI, no, na maraming mga newspapers, especially in the regions, na nag-scale down ng operations, o hindi kaya nag-lay off ng mga tao, o hindi kaya nagsara. And because of the pandemic, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when we couldn't even go to the newsstands, unang-una dahil walang dyaryong mabibili, dahil nagkaroon ng problema sa supply ng papel. Pangalawa, hindi makarating ang mga dyaryo sa newsstands, wala ring mabibili. At hindi rin makalabas ang mga tao dahil hindi rin sila makabili dahil naka-lockdown, ano. So ang laki ng impact nito sa news media industry at nag-translate ito sa what we can call a sense of financial insecurity on the part of journalists, no. This was the highest in the Philippines, no? And then this was exacerbated by the shutdown of ABS-CBN, okay, because of the non-renewal of the franchise. So these were some of the conclusions that we drew from the snapshot survey, no. First, most journalists viewed COVID-19 news coverage as challenging. They felt exposed to the pandemic, knew at least one colleague was infected, no. Only 47%, wala pa sa kalahati, ang nabigyan ng protective gear among those who interviewed in the region. Okay? We found that there was a high understanding of what this information was, and most journalists believe this information affected news coverage. but their news organizations were very careful and are not likely to be associated with the spread of disinformation. Next, we found a very high dependence, on government information and press releases, and high trust in health experts and the WHO. We also saw that majority of journalists tried to balance coverage by interviewing marginalized voices. Okay, we found some evidence of government pressure in some countries, not all countries. And then majority of journalists feared that their news organizations would experience financial difficulties because of the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as mentioned by our seminar director earlier, we are in the second track of our study involving qualitative interviews. So we plan to wrap up our in-depth interviews with at least 30 journalists reporting on the COVID-19 pandemic very soon. So we have conducted interviews in person, by phone, or using Zoom or Google Meet. How did we select our interviewees? We took into consideration the experiences of journalists, including emerging news professionals. Okay. Again, our sampling is purposive. We will deliberately select news professionals, including influencers, kung merong significant sources among them of COVID-19 news. And then yung mga tinatawag na crisis news actors to gain insight into their knowledge. And then we will use the interview guide developed by the Global Risk Journalism Hub. Okay, so the selection will follow a two-step process. So first, we identified key news outlets in the ecology of COVID-19 news. And then we will identify the representatives of these news outlets. So first, we will ensure geographical representation. We will select key news outlets, and we will ensure representation across Metro Manila, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Kaya tayo nagkaroon ng orientation with our PPI members from the community journalists, community papers. And we will also ensure representation across platforms. So dapat may print, online, TV, radio. And then we will also endeavor to ensure gender representation. Ito po yung requirement ng ating ethics review committee. Okay. So how will we analyze the data? We will do thematic analysis. We will process the transcripts. We will come up with broader themes, and these themes will be the basis of the narrative of the report that we will present during the launch. Okay. Okay. I'd like to share some initial insights that we drew from our qualitative interviews. So following the outline of the questionnaire developed by the interview guide developed by the Global Risk Journalism Hub. Tinanong namin yung mga mamamahayag, ano ba sa tingin nila? Now, we wanted to look at their perceptions of the government's handling or what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. We asked them, ano ba yung mga key issues of the COVID-19 pandemic? Kasi alam natin this will impact their coverage. So first, marami sa kanila, they thought that government response was poor. And then when we talked to them, they were really concerned about the economic difficulties arising from mobility restrictions. Nasa utak nila yan, nasa consciousness nila yan na maraming taong naghirap dahil sa mga mobility restrictions. They also found that the vaccination rollout was quite slow. Okay. And then many were taking issue with the virtual press conferences. Mamaya, discuss natin tong mga virtual press conferences. And then marami din nagsabi na medyo discouraging na some news events required them to undergo RT-PCR testing. And this discouraged them, especially if hindi ito sagot ng news desk. Okay, we asked them, kasi nga Global Risk Journalism Hub, tinanong namin kung sa tingin ba nila nagiging global yung scope ng coverage nila. Admittedly, hindi. But it touched on global issues when it came to vaccination rollout, the vaccination rollout. So, alam naman natin nagkaroon ng issues on vaccine equity. And the brands that are being used in the Philippines, no? Kailan papasok ang Pfizer, etc. Moderna. So yan ang naging global na aspect ng kanilang coverage of the vaccine. But overall, the coverage was basically the local response. Okay, so we confirmed na yun nga, they were heavily dependent on government sources, no? Particularly the IATF. No? Well, more on this soon, no? When in the succeeding editions of our scholastic outreach. No? Okay, yung research daw nila admittedly, ang daming, well, one recurring theme is the heavier workload during the crisis. And because of the heavy workload, tons of stories they're writing, a lot of Zoom events that they need to attend, wala nang ganong time for research. And if they're going to do research, the research is mostly confined to Google searches. Okay. Okay, tinanong namin kung marami ba silang nakikitang fake news at how they would characterize the incidents of fake news. No? The respondents that we talked to, the interviewees we talked to, told us na maraming misinformation regarding vaccines. No? Sama mo na dyan pati yung mga treatments na hindi advisable, no? Halimbawa yung gamot na para sa kabayo, no, na ino-offer ng ilan na gamot daw sa COVID, although hindi ito recommended ng WHO. No? Okay, we found that there was more trust on health experts than on the president and political appointees and even the military people overseeing the response. No? Okay, let's qualify this. Of course, they had no choice but to print the stories if they're coming from the government officials. Siyempre, these are official pronouncements. But when it comes to health, no, mas nakikinig sila sa mga health experts, no, rather than the political appointees, the IATF people, no, the military people in the IATF, and even the president himself. No. Okay, there was a sense of fear, no, among journalists, no, of going out to cover because they're afraid that they might bring COVID-19 home. Okay, we found journalists, no, starting to get used to working from home, no, perhaps because of the problem of traffic, no, especially in Metro Manila. Marami nang parang nasasanay na sa work from home, no? But they said they're willing to go out for major news coverages. No, yun nga lang pag may RT-PCR testing na required, baka hindi dahil baka hindi sagutin ng news desk. Okay. We found na ni-report din namin to sa network and interesado sila dito. We found na somewhat may pagkakaiba doon sa experience ng mga journalists in the metropolis, in the city, and those in the provincial areas. No? Siguro, our colleague Rides Barsha will shed light on this later on. Ano? Difference between city and provincial journalists. Actually, na-interview ko si Rides. No? So, Rides will explain this later, no? Better than me. So, I guess I should stop here. No? And I hope I would be able to interact with you more later. In answering whatever questions na you might have. Salamat po sa oras na binigay ninyo, and happy with for PPI inviting me, and I hope to be able to join the later editions of the Scholastic Outreach. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Prof. Ipe. I think there were a lot of points raised dun sa study. There were findings that were true across the region, diba? Lalo na dun sa feeling of insecurity in terms of how the pandemic would impact the newsrooms financially. But as Prof. Ipe pointed out, that fear was highest in the Philippines, right, Prof?
Yes.
Parang among Filipino journalists, it was really a big concern for us.
Yes.
And that was also evidenced by an earlier study by the PPI, which showed that several newspapers either folding down or folding up rather, and or downsizing, nagbawas ng
Downsizing.
tao.
Yeah,
Oo.
correct.
Yun yung mga na-experience natin, and some of them went purely online and nawala na talaga yung pagpiprint nila, no? Hindi na from the mainstream newspaper to purely digital. And one aspect of that study that really interested me was that iba yung naging response ng community journalists at saka ng mga national journalists when it comes to covering remotely or working from home under a work from home arrangement. For community journalists, it was more like hindi pwede yung work from home, no? They preferred to still go out and do the coverage on the
Field
ground.
work talaga, Joy. So,
Field work talaga. I think maybe it's because maliit yung coverage area, or they really feel that they have to be boots on the ground, talk to the people. And what I love about that study, even if initial pa lang yung resulta, is that there was really an effort among Filipino journalists to go and interview the marginalized voices, to seek out the marginalized voices. Kasi nga, nakita natin during the pandemic, because of the heavy reliance on official data, on official press releases, napakadali pong mawalan ng boses yung mga hindi naman nakaka-access talaga sa media. So to add to that discussion, kasi tahi-tahi po talaga ang ating discussion. At nabanggit nga ni Prof. Pena, isa ito sa mga kinausap niya, may I call on Ms. Rides Barsha, ang aking perennial roommate dati at laging ko-orderan ko ng pizza, to discuss how the community media responded to the challenges brought about by the pandemic. Rides, good afternoon.
Hi, Rides.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Hello,
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, pasensya na kayo sa date na nalagay ko. Okay, good afternoon po sa lahat. I'm here from Legazpi City in Bicol Region. As kagaya nga po ng discussion ni Prof. Ipe, ni Joyce, I'd like to discuss to you the experiences of community journalists in the countryside, how we cope up with the present situation. Bicol region, specifically the journalists in Bicol region in Albay province, we experience a double whammy. Kasi nasa gitna tayo ng pandemya, series of typhoon din ang tumama sa Bicol region, specifically in Albay at sa Catanduanes, wherein I'm covering the entire Bicol region, so it composed of 6 provinces in the region and 7 cities. So here's the outline. The community journalist challenges in disaster-prone region during the time of pandemic. Impact of ABS, CBN, and Sagasitnus FM closure in the past years in the middle of pandemic. Going beyond the comfort zone despite of restriction amid the pandemic. Coping with the new normal coverage. Despite of poor internet connectivity, and the journalist perspective in the middle of pandemic. Sorry for that. Okay. Here, what are the challenges we encounter here in Bicol region, specifically in Albay, the laboratory of disaster? So during the height of pandemic, and so as sa gitna ng pandemya, nakaranas po kami ng hagupit ng pinakamalalakas na typhoon. So nagkaroon kami ng problema. Ito yung problema nating lahat. There's no public transportation available for more than a year. So ang hirap-hirap dahil ito'y nasa kalagitnaan po ng lockdown. So while nasa kalagitnaan ng lockdown, mas marami pong balita ang nangyayari na kailangan i-cover But despite of this, naging resourceful ang mga community journalists just to report the story from the grassroots, from the ground. So at that time, napaka-expensive po ng transportation, napakahirap sa mga community journalists, lalo na kokonti lang po yung salary na they're generating from the stations dahil nga nagkaroon po ng downsizing ng production, lalo na po sa mga publication na maliliit din. So everything is coping up. Talagang nagkailangan ng mag-cop up just to report from the grassroots, to inform the public. Masaya na mahirap yung nararanasan po ng mga mamamahayag, lalo na po sa kalagitnaan ng pandemya at tayo'y nakaranas po ng napakalalakas na typhoon. At the time, 3 typhoon in a span of a week. So 3 weeks at that time. So weekly kaming binabayon ng typhoon na maraming tao po ang nasa resettlement area, and until now, yung mga affected na communities po due to typhoon, nasa resettlement areas pa din ngayon and still homeless. Ano po yung kinakatakutan ng mga community journalists at the time? Ito po yung fear of being infected with the deadly virus and possible transmission to family members. So lahat po siguro tayo, takot na makahawa or mahawaan tayo sa gitna ng pandemya. And at that time, yung vaccine hindi pa masyado na-prioritize yung mamahayag. Kasi ang pinakaunang dapat ma-inoculate at that time is yung mga frontliner from medical field. So ano pa yung mga challenges na hinaharap ng mga mamahayag is we don't have hazard pay, lalo na po yung mga nasa maliliit na publication with limited financial resources and support. Pag pupunta ka sa publication, parang they're on their own. But kung nakakapag-contribute naman, nagbibigay ang maliliit na pahayagan dito sa Bicol, but it's not enough to continue. Pero yun. But this the same, despite ng limitation po ng resources, the community journals is still reporting from the ground. So here, to exist as a journal sa gitna ng pandemya at sa gitna po ng hagupit ng malalakas na bagyo, it's survival of the fittest dahil we experienced a double whammy at that time because of pandemya, and so the series of disasters na humagupit po sa Bicol region. But despite of limitation, nandyan po ang mamahayag, hindi umurong, hindi nabahagang buntot para ipagpatuloy ang trabaho, para makapag-inform sa public kung ano ang nararapat at makapag-inform po sa gobyerno kung ano ang kailangan dito sa countryside. Okay, sa gitna po ng pandemya at natural na kalamidad, anong mga na-experience ng mamahayag? So, nagkaroon po ng close down, yung closure ng ABS-CBN, another radio station sa Bicol, sa Legazpi, nagsara yung sa Gitsit News FM. Ito po ay nakapagdala ng more than 50 na empleyado na nawala ng trabaho sa gitna ng pandemya at sa gitna po ng kalamidad na nangyari noong mga nakaraang taon. Malaking ano to sa amin, Dago, kasi nabawasan yung katuwang namin sa pagpapalaganap ng tamang balita para sa mga tao. Despite ng pandemya, nagkaroon tayo ng unemployment na nakadagdag pa po sa problema ng mga mamahayag. kami nabawasan, parang nalagasan kami ng katulong sa pagpapahayag po ng tamang impormasyon sa mga tao sa gitna ng kalamidad at pandemya. So, mahirap kasi kalaban dito natin lahat ang fake news. So, we don't want the people to rely on solely for Facebook na mali, na hindi sila nakakarating dun mismo sa ground. So, hindi nila na-counter-check. There's no fact-checking sa reporting. Kung anong nakikita lang ina-upload sa Facebook as if totoong nangyayari, yun ang medyo mahirap na kalaban at that time. At kahit po ngayon. So, napakalaki po ng papel ng mamahayag sa grassroots, sa countryside kasi through the community journalists, doon po lang natin malalaman yung truth-telling reporting. Here, ito po yung nakapagpabago sa atin ngayon sa coverage sa buong Pilipinas. It's globally ito nakapagpabago. Lalo na po sa countryside na may mahirap na sitwasyon sa internet connectivity. Either ang bagal-bagal or madalas makat ang internet connection dahil sa nagkakaroon ng problema sa power connection. So eto mahirap kasi nagkaroon tayo, parang na-decode yung process of coverage from the normal, from face-to-face, nagkaroon tayo ng new normal through virtual platforms. Pero sa virtual platforms kasi, ang pagkakaiba, hindi mo makukuha yung pinaka-gist ng story kasi hindi natin alam kung yung mga sources natin nagsasalita ng totoo. Unless na nabigyan tayo ng handouts ng data na talagang nagpapakita na this document talaga is talagang nakakapag-back up ng totoong informasyon. Nagkakaroon din sa virtual press conference, nagkakaroon din ng sinasala yung mga tanong. So hindi na pwede yung kung very critical ka magtanong, usually hindi ka na tinatawag. So hindi ka na pina-prioritize during the new normal situation sa virtual platforms na ginagawa ng mga national government agencies or ng mga local government units. So eto po yung decoding ng coverage natin from face-to-face, just like the classroom F2F. Mahirap para sa mamahayag na sanay tayo sa field. Pero ako on my end, hindi lang ako nagre-rely sa virtual. So lagi po ako nasa labas. Pero karamihan talaga ng mamahayag nasa labas. Kahit may marami tayong difficulties na hinaharap. Kasi nga, yung balita, laging nasa grassroots. Hindi dahil maliit yung area coverage. Kung tutuusin, since Bicol is peninsula, mas mahirap siya kasi we have 2 islands, Catanduanes and Masbate. So mas mahirap siya i-cover. We have 4 mainland provinces, Sorsogon, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, and Albay. So, napakalalaki pong probinsya nito. So, ang hirap siya puntahan. Kailangan mo, bago ka makarating sa ibang lugar, kailangan mo kumuha ng mga dokumento para makapasok ka. Kasi merong bawat probinsya that time, merong lockdown. So, ngayon lang tayo medyo na-relax dahil nasa alert level 1. Pero during nung hardest lockdown, ang hirap-hirap po para sa mamamahayag na we are, lalo pag regional ang coverage mo, napakahirap, magastos, mahirap, pero hindi hindi siya dahilan para hindi ka mag-cover ng malalaking balita from the grounds. I would like to share to you yung perspective ng mga mamahayag during nung hardest lockdown, side by side with the occurrence of series of natural disasters, yung typhoons, earthquake in Masbate, ano pa ba? Sa Albay is flash flood. Aside nung typhoons, nagkakaroon kami ng series of flash flooding dahil sa tail end of the cold front lang nakakapag-produce ng malakas na precipitation na nagko-cause mismo ng remobilization ng volcanic materials. So, ito po yung mga naranasan namin from the countryside. But just the same, ang maganda pong nangyayari dito sa Bicol kasi kahit napakahirap ng sitwasyon, in time of disaster, nawawala po ang competition. So, we are sharing our data from, nagkakaroon kami ng brainstorming. We are sharing our data. Unless kung feature storage siya, no sharing of data. Pero pag mga stories na breaking news na hindi kayang puntahan, nag-iba namin mga kasama, nagbibigayan na lang kami ng data. Bahala ka na gumawa kung anong gusto mong angle ng story as long as nasa iyo yung data para hindi siya masunog. Kung hindi kayang pumunta ng ibang mamayag sa isang lugar. So nagbibigayan kami ng data. So those governments naman, kung merong kaming kasama na merong sasakyan, so nagsasabay-sabay na lang kami. Or else sa ibang pagkakataon naman, yung mga kamag-anak namin, nakikisuyo kami para makapunta sa ibang area na kailangang puntahan para lang makarapating ang balita sa publiko. Ano nga ba yung nakita namin from the field, from our lenses? From the grassroots, nakakabagbag damdamin kung anong makikita natin sa labas, lalo na yung mga farmers, lalo na yung mga fishermen na hirap makapagdala ng kanilang mga goods sa community, sa market dahil sa walang transportasyon. Kokonti or yung kung ano mang binibigay ng gobyerno ay hindi po sapat. So parang on their own lahat. So survival lahat. Bahala ka na mag-survive sa gitna ng pandemya, sa gitna ng unos ng kalamidad. Doon nandiyan ang tulong ng gobyerno. Pero hindi po talaga siya sapat. So you have to stand up. You have to get back on your own feet to survive. So the loss of economic opportunities due to limited access to public transportation, there were no storage, tapos other facilities na pwedeng pag-imbakan ng produkto. Ito yung nakita namin sa field na kailangan siya actionan ng government hanggang ngayon. At para just in case mayroon pa tayong dumating na anumang kalamidad at pandemya, kaya na natin itong actionan. Kaya ng actionan ng gobyerno yung mga nakitang mga lapses ng government sa pagkakataong ganitong may pandemya, magkakasabay ang natural na kalamidad. So legitimate and independent journalist resiliency is tested in time of pandemic and conflict disaster events despite of restriction and economic crisis. Kasi po, yun nga sinabi ko na dito na despite ng limitation, nagtulong-tulong lahat ng mamahayag from the countryside to share information to the public. Yun nga, unless kung ang story is assignment sa'yo or feature story, it's a big no-no of sharing the data. So, yun lamang po. Maraming salamat.
Okay, thank you, Rides. And we are officially opening the floor to questions from our participants. We will wait for Rides. Parang kailangan mag-end ng sharing. Lang, ha? If you have questions for Rides and Prof. Ipe, please drop your questions sa ating chat box and we will ask them. Or simply raise your hand and we will call you to ask your questions personally. Siguro simulan ko lang, Rides, ano? As a community journalist, ano yung pinaka main hurdle na hinarap ninyo during the pandemic? Of course, Bicol is a bit differently situated, ano? Dahil maliban sa may pandemic, parang ano yan one-stop shop ng mga bagyo, ng kalamidad.
Correct. Typhoon belt, di ba?
Tumatama talaga doon So that really added to the pressure, ano? Plus, of course, there's the labor aspect pa the labor situation ng mga journalists. But what was the biggest hurdle that you had to face?
Marami, pero ang pinakamahirap dito, Joyce, yung on the first during the hardest lockdown, di ba hardest lockdown siya tapos nasa kalamidad, mahirap pumunta sa mga lugar na badly affected ng disaster kasi nga kailangan mo maglakad ng medyo malayo. Maliban sa mabigat yung mga dala dahil sa mga sa mga camera na dala mo, tapos yung batuhan, nasa batuhan ka, kailangan mo umakyat ng bundok. Tapos pagdating mo dun sa area, kailangan, you have to observe siyempre yung safety protocol. Tapos kailangan mo mag-ingat kasi what if positive ka, makahawa ka. Tapos yung mga nasa evacuation site, sa isang classroom lang, in one classroom alone, kahit sinusunod yung health protocol, pero dahil nasa malaki yung numbers of evacuees, merong 4 na families in one classroom. So napakahirap, mahirap mag-cover sa ganong sitwasyon kasi syempre you have to observe the protocols and then sila din. Kasi what if magkahawaan na ikaw yung nag-cause na makakahawa ka? So, ang laki ng mahawa ang pamilya. So, meron akong kinover na, halimbawa, yung sa Kinubatan, meron dong nagkaroon ng close contact sa COVID positive. So, sinara na mismo yung evacuation, yung resettlement temporary shelter. So hindi namin nalalaman kung ano ba talaga yung nangyayari doon. Mas mahirap yun kasi parang you are blinded. Wala kang nakikita, walang nagpaparating sa'yo ng information kasi nga walang contact. So yun ang napakahirap. Despite nung difficulties na maglalakad ka for how many kilometers, despite nung ang bigat-bigat ng mga dala mong gamit, hindi na natin iniinda yung gutom, yung pagod, makarating lang yung tamang impormasyon sa publiko. Tapos malaman lang ng government kung ano yung situation.
Parang gusto kong questionin yung hindi iniinda ang gutom, Rides. Maliha tayo.
Hindi kasi tayo.
Sobrang sakripisyo naman yun.
Kasi pag sa coverage, ako usually kasi pag nasa field ako, hindi ko nararanasan kaagad yung gutom pag nasa gitna ako ng trabaho. Kasi mas mahirap na babalik ka, although meron kang some chocolates, mas mahirap na babalik ka sa downtown na ang hirap-hirap na nga pumunta sa lugar. Tapos babalik ka para lang kumain. So, ayun. Yun ang mahirap. Yung may disaster, napakahirap sa isang area na di ba maraming remobilization ng mga volcanic materials. Maraming mga baka yung tinabunan. Tapos merong nag-cover ka ng mga patay. dun sa area kung saan nagkaroon ng malaki yung impact ng disaster. Tapos makikita mo din yung responders, you go together with the responders, tapos with the humanitarian mission, with the humanitarian team. And then pupunta ka dun sa area kung saan mas marami yung affected. Yun ang pinaka mabigat na hurdle ng mga mamahayag. Kasi nga malayo. Tapos yung fear of baka mawaan ka kung sino yung positive na makakasama mo. Tapos yung pupuntahan mo, mas kawawa yung situation na nasa evacuation center. So ang hirap-hirap ng ganong klase ng sitwasyon.
Right, puntahan ko lang si Prof. Ipe. Prof, doon po ba sa study ninyo, may lumabas ba ng mga concerns in terms of emotional well-being, mental stress, anxiety ng mga journalists during the pandemic? I think there was one on...
Lalo na dun sa second track, sa qualitative.
Yes.
Bagit ko kanina na isa dun sa mga recurring na mga themes dun sa mga interviews ay yung dami ng workload.
Yeah.
So, ang common na sinasabi nila is sobrang dami daw ng mga Zoom events na kailangan puntahan. No, ako ang impression ko is they seem to be making up, no, compensating for the lack of field work. So puntahan lang natin lahat ng mga Zoom na pwede natin puntahan.
I have Zoom meetings in a day.
And then or press conferences.
Yeah.
And then they feel na the workload is heavier, and they say na may impact into sa mental well-being. No, of course, apart from the others, the fear of getting COVID, the fear na you might lose your job, and others, the recession, yung economic downturn, the livelihoods of other members of the families. All of these are top of the mind of our journalists.
I only ask because I had one reporter under me who was covering health during the early months of the pandemic, Prof. And then I received a call from her na nanginginig yung boses niya. And she was asking me if I could transfer her, if I could yank her out from the health coverage. Kasi hindi na raw niya kaya yung naririnig niya everyday yung siren ng ambulance. Parang feeling niya every time she hears an ambulance, may patay. Tapos day in, day out, she was counting ilan ang patay, ilan ang nagka-COVID, diba? Kung nag-recover, ilan yung nag-recover. So it took a toll on her mental well-being. And as an editor, parang I really had to yank her out. Kasi hindi ko alam kung magkakaroon ng physical manifestation yon. And I actually felt that. I felt that kasi nagre-react yung body ko rin sa ambulance siren Parang feeling ko kasi may patay na nilalabas lagi. Ganun kakaaning especially during the early months, di ba, na hindi mo maintindihan. Parang you were forced to survive and thrive in something na even you yourself, you're very, very afraid for your own health and well-being. Right? Sa among community journalists, napapag-usapan ba yon? Is that something that, you were able to discuss among yourselves na, kamusta tayo? Baka sobra-sobra na yung stress natin.
Kami kasi dito, yung mga, meron kaming association, yung mga, yung correspondence, national correspondence or group, after ng coverage namin, yung kaya pa na nasa field, pero kasi yung mga senior citizen na hindi na namin sinasabay, nagkakaroon kami ng brainstorming, sharing of, kasi dahil siguro sanay na kami sa coverage ng disaster, pero hindi yung pandemya. So magkaiba kasi. So with pandemic and disaster hitting side by side sa atin dito sa countryside, hindi mawawala yung minsan bababa talaga yung moral mo pag nakita mo yung situation sa disaster, kasi iba yung situation ng yung disaster na marami kang nakikitang patay. And at the same time, pag nag-cover ka sa pandemic, syempre nalalaman mo din ilan yung mga namatay, ilan yung bata. Tapos since Legazpi is the regional center, so dito lahat ang bagsak ng mga malalaking istorya. So dito lahat ang dalahan ng mga may COVID. Kasi BRTTH is the referral hospital ng COVID.
The province?
Sa Bicol region.
Sa buong region, okay.
So there are 3 hospitals, pero since BRT is the biggest hospital and mas marami ang dinadala sa BRT, 4 provinces, Catanduanes, Albay, Sorsogon, and 2 island provinces, Catanduanes and Masbate. So malaki yung bulk dito sa Legazpi, sa BRTTH. So hindi rin mawawala na magiging emotional kasi sitwasyon. So both yung sa pandemya, yung mga namatay sa pandemya, yung mga namatay doon sa disaster, at syempre sa personal mo lalo, alimbawa ako that time, yung parents ko, yung mama ko naging COVID positive. So ang hirap sa akin nagko-cover both and na-isolate ako for almost a month. Mahirap.
Ang naisip ko kasi, Rides, parang itong pandemic na to, although tama ka, no? Yung mga journalist naman sanay mag-cover ng stressful situations, ng crisis situations. Ang kakaiba lang dito, it's continuing.
Yeah.
Parang walang closure. Kailan ito matatapos? Because, like, no, I was comparing also my reaction kasi isa sa medyo recent, hindi naman sobrang recent, pero fairly recent na na-cover ko was yung sa Sendai, yung tsunami sa Japan. And then we went to that school na 4 stories high. Lahat ng estudyante doon patay, kindergarten kids. Tapos alam mo yun, yung napaka-stressful na yung mga bags nila, nakakalat doon, yung mga sapatos na na-recover na maliliit. And you know that those belong to children who did not have a chance of surviving the tsunami. Although it was stressful, para after 1 week, ma-debrief mo yung sarili mo. Itong pandemic, hindi siya humihinto. Parang stress ka today, the next day, stress ka pa rin. So patuloy, tapos nagbe-build up siya. Ang fear ko nga, baka eventually, nasanay na tayo masyado. Parang we've become so cynical about it kasi 2 years na eh. So parang hindi na rin ganun yung impact sa atin. Parang do we still get shocked? Do we still get angry that maybe 30 people died today? Wala na nga mukha yung mga numbers na yan eh. Unlike dati, unang mga deaths sa pandemic, hinahanap pa natin sino ba yung namatay, sino yung biktima, sino yung nakasurvive. Ngayon, we've been reduced to numbers already.
And one thing more, di ba tayo pag nasa field, kung ano mang emosyon, ano mang nararamdaman natin, pinapatay ko yun. Pinapatay ko yun. Pinapatay ko lahat kung ano man nararamdaman ko sa field, pinapatay ko lahat. So para hindi na sakripisyo yung objectivity natin as mamahayag. Pero at the end of the day, tao tayo eh. So iiyak ka pag pagbalik mo sa kung saan ka gagawa ng storya, doon ko nararamdaman na umiiyak na pala ako. Yun. Pero yun nga, dahil parang nasanay na ako sa disaster na, okay na yan. Alimbawa, yung super typhoon Remigio doon ako matagal na nakapag-cope na hindi ako nakarecover agad kasi the worst disaster ever. Pero etong mga sunod-sunod na disaster, parang okay na din lang sa akin. But with pandemya, nagkaroon pa rin ako ng demarcation saan ba ako dapat lumugar para, syempre, we have to take care of ourselves. Kasi pag hindi tayo mag-iingat, diba, paano pa tayo makakapagbalita? And then,
may questions lang si Jillian. Maybe Prof. Ipe and Rides would like to take on this. In what form daw ba nasusuportahan ng organizations natin, ng media org sa mga journalists? Sa study ni Prof. Ipe, meron doon about lack of PPEs, Prof, diba? Saka lack of support for antigen or RT-PCR testing. rights
Insurance,
mentioned
Joyce.
walang hazard pay, sabi niya, di ba?
Insurances.
So, anong forms of support ang binibigay? Yes, Ariel. Para daw safely makapag-cover kayo on the ground.
Parang we are on our own eh. Kasi ako, I have my own PPE. Nag-provide talaga ako ng PPE for myself. Lahat ng other safety gear, kailangan ko provide para to protect myself. So, ganun na lang.
Kasi Cora, siya, parang freelancer, no? So, pero I guess the answer would depend on how big your news organization is, no? So, yung mga malalaking news organizations may resources. But the smaller ones, ayun. Minsan hindi sagot yung mga RT-PCR testing sa mga news events.
So, Prof, napansin ko lang, dati nire-require pa talaga yung at the very least antigen sa mga events na medyo dikit-dikit. Pero simula nung nag-alert level 1, tapos nag-start yung campaign for the elections, nawala. Parang ano ba, nawala din ba yung COVID? Tapos parang people are covering the campaigns of various candidates na walang support ng antigen or RT-PCR testing from their companies. So napakahirap din. I mean, I say that even my own company cannot, shoulder kung kailangan yung antigen or you have to make a request for it. Hindi siya yung tipong voluntarily they will tell you na ali ka magpa-antigen ka.
Pwede siguro reimbursement na lang yan.
Oo, ganun. We'll make arrangements for it. Parang minsan nga mas okay pa if you attend an event na may mandatory antigen testing pagdating doon.
Na libre.
Oo, libre ka, di ba? Kaya lang, sometimes they don't tell you, so nabibigla ka. Yung ilong mo hindi ready. Para matusok at sakit-sakit pa man din.
Ilang beses ang natusok ang ilong mo, Joyce?
Ako, parang 3 times na. Tapos hindi naman worth it yung story. Alam mo yun?
Ako once pa lang. Tapos,
wala na yatang pwede mag-claim sa atin, Ariel, na virgin ng nose. Wala na.
Tama.
Sanay na tayo. At si Jillian pala, meron siyang follow-up. In general, what can your organizations do to improve the support they give to journalists when reporting during a crisis? Naku, Jillian, this is such a very complicated question. Napakahirap sagutin po niyan. Dapat mga may-ari ang sumagot.
Correct.
But I think it boils down to labor conditions then. Hindi lang siya dahil hindi lang siya band-aid solution na magbigay ka ng PPE. Kailangan ayusin din siguro yung pasahod.
Correct.
Ang dami. Multifaceted itong tanong na to.
Kailangan din talaga alam mo Joyce, yung mag-usap-usap.
Ay, oo. Ano mo totoo yan, Ariel?
Oo.
Super.
Minsan kasi wala nang puro work lang about, itong ganito ka, reporter ka, publisher ako. Pero yung siguro yung mga in instances na hindi siya outside of the work function and all, yung wala lang, tete lang ba nag-usap kayo? I think maganda yung panimula ng conversation. So
Ariel, I just finished a security course, a short-term security course. Tapos ang realization nga namin doon, and maybe this is a shout out to the people in the academy with us, si Dean, who's attending also this session. And also IPE, because of UST pala, napansin lang namin parang kulang in terms sa curriculum, yung pagtutok sa security for journalists, pagprotekta sa health nila, and also pag-assess ng mental well-being ng journalists. We're not even taught how to do first aid. Tayo yung sumasabak sa mga critical na coverage. Tapos kung titingnan mo yung setup ng newsrooms, maaaring i-deny natin, pero sa totoo lang, pervasive ang macho culture. From the time that you enter journal school in college, ang tinuturo sa'yo maging matatag, maging resilient, maging matapang, walang tanggihan na coverage. Diba? Kulang na lang magpakamatay ka para sa coverage mo. Pero hindi yun tama eh. Tapos sa newsroom parang, lalo na siguro kung babae ka, kung tatanggi ka dun sa coverage dahil sa tingin mo delikado or may impact sa'yo, baka ang tingin sa'yo mahina ka. Diba yung mga ganong bagay, dapat pinag-uusapan at binabago natin.
Yeah, alam mo, Joyce, totoo yan, ano? So, under the new curriculum, actually sa tulong na rin ng iba't ibang mga advocacy groups, nagkaroon ng course plan, no? For journalist safety. At di ba, a few years back, nag-launch tayo ng journalist safety guide.
Yeah.
So, dahil dyan, isa na yan sa mga materials na ginagamit namin ngayon sa journalism school when we began to implement a new curriculum in 2018. No? Ito yung mga curriculum ng mga nag-senior high school na pumasok na sa college. So, I would say na ngayon mas may awareness na yung mga estudyante tungkol sa safety, risk assessment, no? When it comes to news coverage. But I guess dapat ito supplementohan ng mga newsrooms, no? So
yes,
dati din namin may safety training rin sa mga newsrooms. True.
Hindi lang physical but even digital security training.
Correct.
Napaka-importante.
Yung digital footprint mo.
Kasi prof, naalala ko yung teacher ko nung college sa John 102. Sabi niya sa amin hindi niya daw tatanggapin yung paper namin na late. Maliban na lang kung naghihingalo kami sa ospital. So parang diba at that early stage, inukit-kit na sa utak mo na deadline is supreme.
Magpapakamatay ka sa store.
Oo. And nangyari yun sa akin na hinold up yung jeep ko na sinasakyan. Tinulak ko po yung hold upper sa takot ko na makuha yung paper ko. At naipasa ko siya on time dahil lang I was so afraid na bumaba yung grade ko. So ayun, I think
you were so afraid, Joyce, na bumaba ang grade mo kaya nag-magna cum laude ka tuloy.
Oy! Si Ariel love niya ako, kaya niya ako binubukin.
Oo, humble lang talaga yan si Joyce. Oo.
Si Weng, she messaged earlier na she wanted to ask questions. Weng, if you're there, you could just unmute and ask, but otherwise, baka i-reserve niya for later.
Oo.
Ano lang?
Ayan na, si Mamu.
Hindi, iniisip ko lang dun sa research nila, Sir Ipe.
Oo.
Kasi sabi may high reliance on government sources. But at the same time, nag-interview din ng marginalized groups, no? So, inisip ko lang kung hindi ba nagbabangga yung dalawa. So, parang ano yung nagiging dominant narrative sa reports? Is it the ones coming from government sources or is it the one coming from the other groups, the marginalized groups? Or hindi naman sila bangga, wala silang conflict?
Often I would say na nag-dominate yung government narrative kasi yan ang number one source of information. Pero that's a good topic for a content analysis, no? And makikita natin kung ano yung common narratives na nagprevail. And we by doing a content analysis, makikita natin kung to what extent, no, na binigyan ng prominence ng mga newsrooms yung mga narratives of the marginalized sources, no. Baka hindi ganoon kalaki. Kasi in fact, dun sa results natin na half to 60% lang ang nag-interview ng marginalized sources. Not everyone was doing it. Although majority did it, but not everyone.
Naalala ko kasi din nung may issue sa survey results, no. Ang sabi nung naging resource person dun sa isang roundtable discussion ng mga editors ng ABS-CBN, ang sabi niya, there's such a thing as a socially accepted response or something. Parang
conformity.
Yes.
So parang yun yung iniisip nila na tamang sagot. But not necessarily yun yung talagang pakiramdam nila.
Mm-hmm.
So parang if you are asking this series of questions, baka mahalaga ring ma-identify if there are questions na sasagutin nila ng ganun. Katulad nung halimbawa yung walang pressure, na medyo skeptical kasi ako, walang pressure from government to publish information. Minsan parang yung pressure is not necessarily directly saying na, oh, you need to publish this or you don't publish this. But there's an environment that pushes you to
do something,
publish whatever they want. Kahit hindi siya directly in-order sa'yo. So parang yung ganun lang. Paano natitake into account yung ganong klaseng factors?
Actually, Ms. Weng, tama ka eh. So, kasi ano yan eh, online survey, and that's why that's also an issue that we wanted to investigate dun sa mga qualitative interviews din. No, so I hope when we finish processing these transcripts, no, we could shed more light on the issue of pressure. No, so but definitely merong evidence of pressure, even subtle pressure. Yun nga lang, overall, parang sa tingin nila wala. But tama ka, the pressure can come in different ways. No? And maybe because the government is holding the microphone, no? So and in many instances walang pressure, pero there is evidence of pressure. No?
Kasi if you shut down a network or if you deny franchise to a network, so parang merong kang na-create na isang environment na kapag hindi nyo nilabas yung the official line is parang itong ganong threat.
It's what we call a chilling effect.
Yeah.
So it's not directly applied on you, but because of what happened to other people's paligid mo, parang hindi ka pa nga sinasabihan na don't do this, sa sarili mo automatic hindi mo nagagawin or magdadalawang isip ka.
We could say na yung dun sa regional results mas forthright, mas ramdam ng mga Malaysian at Indian journalists yung pressure. Na yung mga Filipino journalists, hindi nila masyadong binoise out yun sa survey, But let's see dun sa interviews.
Thank you.
Thank you, Weng. One quick follow-up from Jillian. Was there ever a time the challenges brought by the pandemic, as well as the lack of sufficient support from your news organization, affected your commitment to your job or your satisfaction as a journalist? Shucks, dapat may kasamang beer. Inuman session tong question ni Jillian. Rides, meron ba? Or does it just push you to do better?
To do better. To do more better. Sa akin kasi, mga special assignment, okay naman ako, lahat ng support binibigay sa akin. Siguro hindi naman ako makakarating sa more than 10 years, 15 years para sumuko lang. Hindi.
Where did you encounter sentiments like this one in your study or in your personal work as a journalist?
No, hindi. No? So, dun sa mga nakausap ko, of course, may impact sa mental health. No? But many of the journalists I talk to, sabi nila, well, this is a job that I want to do. No, kahit mahirap siya, this is a job where they can find fulfillment. No, yung kanilang news coverage of the pandemic, they think is helping people become more informed, and therefore, it's not, despite these challenges, no, they're not thinking of abandoning it altogether. Because hindi naman uniform ang story sa lahat, but overall, we did not see a sense like that.
I think historically,
commitment pa rin.
Yes. And historically, ang Philippine media rise to the occasion whenever there is adversity, whenever there is a perceived common enemy such as this one, the pandemic, di ba? Parang mas umiigting yung kapit mo dun sa profession and mas gusto mong mag-deliver ng totoong balita, verified, accurate, fact-check news. And
mas magandang balita.
Yes. So yung mga na-depress ng konti dun sa mga audience natin, dahil sa mga narinig ninyo na discussion, huwag po kayong mawalan ng loob. So ayan, I think there are no more questions for our two panelists. Thank you, Prof. Epe. Thank you, Rides. And if you are gonna stay, then please do join us in the last two sessions of our discussion. At this point, I'd like to call on, well, kanina kasama na natin siya, pero I'd like to call again Ms. Rowena Carranza Paraan. She's the head of ABS-CBN's Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo, and she will be discussing citizen journalism in the time of the coronavirus. Ms. Weng?
Hello ulit. So magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Magandang hapon sa mga taga Quezon Province. Lagi kong naalala yung Quezon kasi yung isa sa mga pinakaunang coverage ko dyan sa mga bundok-bundok na bahagi ng Quezon. So magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Hindi mo na-miss yung longganisa, Weng? Nila?
Lukban.
Masarap.
Alam mo, hindi kayo dapat nagsasama ni Joyce kasi lagi tayong nauuwi sa pagkain.
I'm pretty sure yun ang na-miss mo yung food eh. Ano mo lang yun?
Actually, walang pagkain doon sa pinuntahan ko.
Grabe naman.
Pero yun yung isa sa pinaka-memorable. So nung unang panahon, hindi pa uso yung citizen journalism. Pero yung mga tip, diba, nanggagaling din sa mga tao kung ano yung nangyari sa lugar nila. So yung coverage na yun, ganun yun eh. Merong isang tao dun sa isang malayong bayan sa Quezon, nagbigay siya ng impormasyon. So pinuntahan namin yung bayan na yun. Isa kaming grupo ng mga journalists coming from Manila. Mabuti na lang Tagalog din sila magsalita, kung hindi mahirap yung coverage, no? Pero yun yung early form ng citizen journalism. Kung titingnan natin sa print, yung citizen journalism, pwede mo rin ituring yung mga letters to the editor, no? Letters to the editor that provide information o kaya nagbibigay ng ibang punto de vista tungkol dun sa ibang mga issue. And then yung mga tumatawag sa telepono at ini-interview live, no, sa radyo, isa rin siyang anyo ng citizen journalism. But since then, nag-evolve na siya ng husto at naging na siyang isang programa, no, na marami ngayon na mga news organizations ay isinusulong. So, punta na ako sa topic ko. So, citizen journalism in the time of coronavirus. Bakit natin siya pinag-uusapan kaugnay ng COVID-19, no? Kasi nung kasagsagan ng lockdown, lalo na nung mga unang buwan, naging malaki yung reliance actually ng media sa mga user-generated contents, yung UGCs na tinatawag, no? So nakukuha to sa social media, karamihan, ano? Tapos ito yung mga naging kuhanan ng balita ng maraming mga reporter. So karugtong siya ng tinatawag nating citizen journalism. So ang pag-uusapan natin yung crowdsourcing and citizen journalism, ano yung konsepto nito, tapos paano ba, kumusta ba yung citizen journalism dito sa Pilipinas, at saka ano yung role ng citizen journalism kaugnay sa pandemya, no, sa pandemic. So bago ang lahat, gusto kong ipakilala sa inyo si Spider-Man, na alam ko kilala ninyong lahat. So lalabas si Spider-Man throughout the presentation. Kung makikita nyo siya, I would like to request you to type in the chat box PPI, Philippine Press Institute, no? PPI. Ilagay nyo sa chat box tuwing makikita nyo si Spider-Man. Mamaya explain ko sa inyo bakit si Spider-Man, bakit hindi si Superman o si Wonder Woman o si SpongeBob, o kaya kung gusto natin Pinoy, bakit hindi si Elastic Man. Pero si Spider-Man. So okay ba sa inyo? I-type lang sa chat box pag nakita nyo si Spider-Man ang tatlong letters, no? PPI. Okay. Gusto kong i-point out yung isang incident, no, to start our discussion about citizen journalism. Isang incident na nangyari noong 2013, this was during the Boston Marathon bombing. Yung Boston Marathon, it's a popular event. Pinupuntahan siya ng mga tao, no, sa iba-ibang bahagi ng mundo para In 2013, there was a bombing that happened during the marathon. Yung unang impormasyon na lumabas ay nanggaling sa isang netizen. Tweet niya to ng 2:57 ng hapon. Ang sabi niya, was 2 blocks away from Boston Marathon finish line when boom boom, gray smoke, lots of police. So sa kanya yung unang impormasyon na may nangyari nung Boston Marathon. So 2:57 p.m. Yung sumunod ay nanggaling from another netizen, si Taylor Dobbs. At least 5 ambulances have gone to Boston Marathon finish line. At tweet niya to ng 3:08. So 2:57, 3:08. And finally, meron ng news organization na nag-break ng story ng 3:20. So 2:57 tsaka 3:20, that's a gap of 23 minutes, no? So malaki yan. Pagka pinag-uusapan natin ay digital platform, segundo yung binibilang dyan. At pag makikita niyo yung mga journalist na nagtatrabaho sa mga online news sites, grabe yung kantsawan niyan kapag naunahan sila ng ilang segundo o naiskupan, no, na o kaya kahit ilang segundo lang yung nauna yung isang online news site, malaking bagay na yan, no? So for a news organization to break the story 23 minutes after a netizen informed the public of the incident, medyo malaking usapin yun, no? And then finally, CNN broke it at 3:40. No? So 2:57, 3:40 yung CNN, so that's what? 43 minutes. Medyo mahaba yun. So ano yung pinapakita ng incident ng Boston Marathon? Pinapakita niya yung kakayahan ng mga ordinaryong mamamayan na mauna, uy, salamat kay Sofia, napansin niya si Spider-Man. At iba pa yan, sumunod na sila. So nakipinakita nung the fact that it was a netizen that broke the story about the Boston Marathon bombing, pinakita niya yung kakayahan ng mga ordinaryong mamamayan na makibahagi, no, dun sa pagkalap ng impormasyon, sa news gathering at saka dissemination, pagbabahagi ng impormasyon sa publiko sa pamamagitan ng kanilang social media platforms, no? So 43 minutes between the netizen and CNN, ang laking no? And then when this one happened naman sa Pilipinas, ayan, nandiyan pa rin si Spider-Man. Yun, maraming salamat sa nagbabantay. PPI po, hindi PPL. May nakita akong PPL. Baka ibang organisasyon yan. Ito namang pangyayaring to, naganap siya sa EDSA. Tinawag siyang hulid up. May isang sasakyan, hinarang siya ng second vehicle, and from the second vehicle, alighted several armed men, no? At yung armas nila hindi simpleng handgun, but M16 rifles. Tinutukan nila yung unang sasakyan. Apparently, the first vehicle was carrying around 250,000 cash, at yung mga armado ay active police officers. Ang sabi nila, hinuhuli nila dahil sa traffic violation, and then later sinabi nila na hinuhuli nila dahil may dalang drugs. No? So, isang concerned citizen, nakita niya yung nangyayari, kinuhanan niya ng picture, in-upload niya sa Twitter account niya. Nakita ng media, nakita ng ibang mga tao, shinare, grinab yung photo. So, nagkaroon ng investigasyon at saka napag-alaman na sila ay mga pulis at nalaman na merong cash involved, kaya siya tinawag na hulid up. No? Hinuhuli na hinuhold up. Kung wala yung concerned citizen na kumuha ng larawan at nag-upload sa kanyang Twitter account nung nangyayari, hindi siguro maiimbestigahan yung pangyayari. At pwedeng nangyari na lang siya nung wala lang, no? Na hindi tayo hindi natin namamalayan na merong mga ganong insidente. Yeah. So, again, isang concerned na citizen, kinuhanan niya ng larawan, yung nakikita niyang kapansin-pansin na nakakapag-alala, no, na nangyayari. Tapos, in-upload niya sa Twitter, disseminate niya basically yung information sa ibang tao para malaman na merong ganong pangyayari. Actually, natakot din siya. Dinown niya actually yung post niya after a while. But it was too late. Na marami nang nakakita, marami nang nag-grab, marami nang nag-share. So, yun, hulida. Again, tulad dun sa Boston Marathon bombing, it's an example of how ordinary citizens ay pwedeng makatulong sa pag-inform sa mamamayan, sa publiko, ng mga mahahalagang pangyayari, no, sa ating paligid. Ilan sa mga related terms sa citizen journalism, yung tinatawag na crowdsourcing. Citizen journalism is a form of crowdsourcing. Ibig sabihin, nagpapatulong ka sa crowd, no? Katulad ng halimbawa, kapag ang Starbucks, nagpa-contest sila ng design ng kanilang mug. Diba? Gusto natin yung mga design ng mga mugs, at saka yung tawag doon, yung thermos nila. So when they asked people to submit designs, they were doing crowdsourcing. Siguro ang isang pinakamadaling example ng crowdsourcing would be yung isang favorite reference ng mga estudyante, yung Wikipedia, no? Because Wikipedia is a crowdsourced site. Ang mga nakalagay doon ay contributions, no? Kino-contribute ng iba-ibang tao. Pwede kang mag-edit ng entries, pwede kang magdagdag, pwede kang magpasok ng ibang you can suggest categories, etc. So, Wikipedia, isa sa parang pinaka-popular source, no, ng information is actually crowdsourced. So maraming halimbawa ng crowdsourcing. At sa media, isa na itong napaka-common na ginagawa. No? Kung minsan nakakakita kayo sa Facebook ng mga reporters, sasabihin nila, crowdsourcing. Meron ba kayong kilala na halimbawa, hindi pa nakakatanggap ng kanyang ayuda, ng blah, 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 blah. So, So paraan nila yun, no, para makahanap sila ng mga cases na pwede nilang i-feature siguro sa report na inassign sa kanila ng kanilang news organization. But there are also crowdsourcing types na katulad ng Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo, yung citizen journalism program ng ABS-CBN. So yung Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo is now on its 15th year. Tagal na, no? It started as Boto Mo Ipatrol Mo kasi it was really just intended for the elections noong 2007. But because there was such overwhelming response, no, from people who submitted photos, video, information of how the 2007 elections were going in their respective areas, na the network decided to continue with the program. So hanggang ngayon, nandito pa siya. Kaya naman ako nandito sa harap niyo because I handle the citizen journalism program. So that's a form of crowdsourcing. Yung user-generated content, ito naman yung mga materials, no, na pinupost sa social media, binibigay ng mga netizens, sinasubmit nila sa Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo at iba pang citizen journalism programs, no, merong U-Scoop, ang GMA7 at iba pa, no. So UGCs ang nickname ng mga ganong klaseng materials. And marami siya nung panahon ng kasagsagan ng lockdown. Ang maraming ginagamit na UGCs, no, yung mga news organizations, kasi maraming hindi lumalabas para makapag-cover. So kapag merong nangyari tulad ng sunog, naghahanap ng UGC na nasa Facebook, nasa Twitter, nasa YouTube, instead of kailanganing pumunta dun sa lugar. Of course, may verification pa rin. Depende dun sa protocol ng news organization. And then kaakibat ng crowdsourcing, UGC, and citizen journalism, yung pagsikat ng tinatawag na hyperlocal journalism. No? Dahil yung mga tao ay mas concerned, syempre, tungkol dun sa yung ng immediate vicinity nila, ng community nila. So yung tinututukan nilang mga report ay yung merong kinalaman dun sa barangay nila, yung merong kinalaman sa mga lugar nila. So doon nag-develop yung tinatawag na hyperlocal journalism. Hyperlocal journalism. So kahit ngayon kasi nung may nakita akong isang app na ginagamit sa messenger apps, pag tiningnan mo, ano yung palaging ginagamit ng mga tao? Ano yung pinipindot nila among the tops? It would usually be news reports na may near me, no? Yung ganon. Balita na malapit sa akin. Kasi yun yung interest ng mga tao. Kaya yung hyperlocal journalism, mas siya ngayon, tumitingkad siya. At tingin ko mas lalo pa siyang titingkad. And this is one of the trends now, no? Hindi lang sa Pilipinas but also in other countries, yung pag-develop, no, yung pag-usbong ng hyperlocal journalism. Okay. Magandang tingnan, may dalawa akong ipapakita sa inyo. Ito yung isa, yung Storyful, at saka yung Bellingcat. No? Ito yung dalawang magandang pag-aralan, no, na business model ng citizen journalism. Kasi yung Storyful at saka yung isa pa, yung Bellingcat, pareho sila nagre-rely heavily on citizen journalism para sa kanilang content. Yung Storyful, ito, nag-i-scout sila sa social media ng mga materials, tapos nag-offer sila ng payment, no, sa mga nakikita nila. So for example, they did this report, COVID-19 a year in review, and they said that Storyful has verified almost 3,000 videos and stories about COVID-19, related to COVID-19. So that's what they do. Ang kanilang reports ay primarily kinukuha mula sa mga UGCs, no? And then yung Bellingcat, ang interesting sa kanila, they do investigative reports, no? Investigative reports na nakabatay sa citizen journalism, no? So ito, innovative approaches to using publicly available data and citizen journalist analysis have been particularly significant. So ang sabi niya, yung largest crowdsourcing effort nila came during the January 6 Capitol riot in Washington, D.C. Ito yung sinugod ng mga supporters ni Trump, no, yung White House. Tapos ang ginawa ng Bellingcat, inipon niya lahat ng nakita niya, no, na mga materials, tapos trinace nila yung paano nangyari yung attack. So they do, which is amazing, right? Investigative reports based on submissions and mga social media posts ng mga tao. Sa Pilipinas, mayroong mga news organizations na mayroong citizen journalism programs katulad ng ABS-CBN. So you have U-Scoop of GMA7. Meron ang Rappler, yung Move PH, which is not just citizen journalism. It's an advocacy arm, no, ng Move. So they do advocacies related to environment at iba pa. No? Ang Bayan May Patrol Mo, as I said, it's been here for 15 years. And I think that's a testament, no, na yung citizen journalism as a platform is very much viable kasi makita natin yung mga tao na very active, very interested in sharing yung kanilang mga materials. Ayan, salamat. Ako, nai-snub ko si Spider-Man, mabuti kayo hindi. Nalilimutan ko siya. So thank you. And then yung Radyo 5, yung TV5 radio affiliate, meron sila yung tinatawag na taxi squad. Yung nakakatuwa sa taxi squad, meron talaga silang ID, they do general assemblies, nagkikita-kita sila, tapos meron silang sticker, no, na nakakabit sa kanilang mga taxi cabs, no. So you can identify na miyembro sila ng tinatawag na taxi squad. Ang karamihan ng report sila is of course tungkol dun sa mga nakikita natin sa kalye, mga aksidente, traffic at iba pa, no. So very, very helpful yan. Parang katulad din ng DCRH, meron din sila dating, nalimutan ko yung tawag pero ganun din, similar to Taxi Squad. Tapos tumatawag sila sa phone, ini-interview sila on air ng anchor para mag-describe at magbigay ng impormasyon tungkol dun sa nakita nilang issue habang nasa biyahe sila. Yeah. So among the news organizations, ito yung medyo merong tuloy-tuloy, no, na citizen journalism. Ibig sabihin, isa siyang formal na program. Okay. Ano nakakatulong yung citizen journalism? Gutom na yung aso ko, Ariel.
We appeal to our participants to put themselves on mute first.
Okay. Thank you, Joyce. Ito yung isa sa mga paborito kong example, no? Ng submission, no? 2 high school students ng taga-Ubay, Bohol, nag-attend sila ng isang citizen journalism workshop na ginawa ng ABS-CBN. Pag-uwi nila sa kanilang lugar, binidyo nila yung kanilang eskwelahan. Yung eskwelahan nila na walang dingding, walang sahig, at walang CR. Ayan, ganyan yung itsura ng school nila. No? Nagkaklase sila, walang dingding, walang sahig. So nakita naman natin, no, na basa. So ibig sabihin pag malakas ang ulan, pumapasok dito yung tubig. Tapos yung kanilang CR ay ganito yung itsura. Yan. Yan lang. So wala tayong makakapag-CR dyan, no? So, gumawa sila ng video, pinadala nila sa Bayan May Patrol Mo, 2 high school students, at nung lumabas yung storya, of course, binerify siya, nagtanong tayo sa LGU, kinuha yung site nila, bakit ganito yung eskwelahan. When the story came out, after a while, nagkaroon ng solusyon yung kanilang problema. Binigyan sila ng budget na ipagawa yung eskwelahan. So, ganito na yung itsura ng eskwelahan nila. Meron ng dingding, meron ng sahig, at yung CR na pagawa din. No? So, again, 2 high school students concerned about the state of their school took a video, sent it to Bayan May Patrol Mo. At hanggang ngayon, nagpapadala pa rin sila ng report sa BNPN. No? Hanggang ngayon, tawag namin kasi sa mga regular na mga nagpapadala ng reports ay bayan patrollers. So yung 2 high school na to ay hanggang ngayon bayan patroller pa rin. Yung kumukuha ng video, yung hindi nyo nakikita sa camera, ano na siya, environment planning officer na siya ng Ubay, Bohol. And ano pa rin siya, no? Nandiyan pa rin siya. 15, halos ano na. Okay. Ito naman ay isang kuha ng isang taga-Sorsogon, kababayan ni Rides. Itong sasakyan na to ay hindi lang siya simpleng overloaded na jeep, no? this is actually a school service. So sinusundo niya sa umaga, hinahatid niya sa hapon mga estudyante na ganito yung setup. Mga nakabitin, meron sa taas. So merong isang bayan patroller, pinadala niya to kasi natatakot talaga siya dun sa magkaroon ng aksidente at merong masaktan. And after that, yung LGU kumilos. Kapag panahon ng eleksyon, ito ang issue natin na hindi nawawala, yung vote buying. So these are some photos, again, sent by citizen journalists. No? Tapos, pag panahon ng kalamidad at panahon ng sunog, ang pinakamabilis na nakukuhanan ng materials ay mga citizen journalists. No? Ito naman ay kapag nung may earthquake, ito ay merong binaha na yung loob ng bahay niya, pero nagpapiano pa rin siya. At pareho to galing sa U-Scoop ng GMA7. So pag panahon ng kalamidad, grabe, ang pinakamaasahan ay yung mga UGCs being submitted by citizen journalists. Ayan. Buti napapansin niyo palagi si Spider-Man. Thank you. Ngayon, hindi lang puro problema, hindi lang puro kalamidad, pwede rin mga pampagood vibes tulad nito. No? Merong gumawa ng, ang tawag nila dito, keycap para dun sa keyboard na pagkain. No? Ang sarap. Okay. So yung citizen journalism doesn't have to be just about problems. It can be also mga nakakatuwa katulad nito. So just to summarize, paano nakakatulong ang citizen journalism? So one, it highlights community issues katulad nung issue ng sa Ubay Bohol, katulad nung sobrang overloaded na delikadong school service. No? It calls attention to emergencies, katulad ng kapag may calamities. It provides updates from the ground on important issues such as during election campaigns, kasama ng issue ng vote buying. And it provides a venue for sharing positive experiences. No? Katulad ng mga pampagood vibes at saka mga nakakatuwang pinapadala. No? So maraming tulong ang citizen journalism. Dahil sa kanya, nabibigyan ng attention yung otherwise issues that would not be published, no, or would not be given airtime. So sa panahon ng coronavirus, ano yung role ng citizen journalism? Meron yung ganito, at ito yung madami kaming natanggap, no? Mga reklamo o mga kwento ng tungkol dun sa mga violations, no, ng health protocols. Ayan, si Spider-Man nakabaliktad. Ito ay tungkol dun sa violation ng health protocol sa isang barangay na nag-aalala yung nagpadala kasi pinapayagang mag-basketball at the time na hindi pa po pwedeng mag-basketball, no? Tapos panahon din ng unang bahagi ng lockdown, no, yung ang daming pinapasok sa ospital. Tapos ito yung mga unang cases na gumaling at na-discharge. So ayan, binivideo nila kasi gusto nila ipadala para ipakita na okay naman, no. Hindi ka naman pwede kang mag-recover from COVID. Tapos ito, nagustuhan ko itong kuha ng miyembro ng taxi squad.
Pagaling ko ba din si Spider-Man? Bilang muna Spider-Man! Mali! Ganito dapat!
Alam ko sobrang appreciative tayo kay Spider-Man, pero mute muna natin.
Nakanta. Ay, kahit konti.
So we would like to ask our yourselves on mute so you do not interfere in the presentation. Weng?
Okay. Maganda naman yung kante bagay.
Oo nga eh.
Okay, ito gusto ko yung kasi I think this kind of scene, hindi to basta makikita ng reporters, no? So talagang isang taxi driver, madadaanan niya to at siya yung nakakuha. Yung nakalagay sa caption, kasalukuyang namamahagi pa rin ng ayuda ang DSWD sa mga oras na to dito sa Batasan Road na kung saan mahaba pa rin ang pila kahit alas 10 na ng gabi. O diba, ano yan ang makakakuha talaga niyan, isang taga dun sa lugar, no? Hindi yan basta-basta mako-cover, no, ng reporters. And then yung mga ganitong padala, kwento ng mga sacrifices, no, ng mga frontliners. Itong isa yung mga teams na pumupunta sa malalayong lugar bilang bahagi ng trabaho nila. Tapos ito naman yung specific story, no, ng isang asawa yung nagpadala tungkol dun sa experience ng kanyang asawa na COVID ward nurse. Yeah. Ito naman yung nagkaroon ng first day ng face-to-face nung pilot pa lang, no? So, mga remote schools yung pinayagan. So, ito yung isang eskwelahan sa napakalayong lugar ng Butolan, Zambales, no? So, ito yung mga halimbawa. Ito naman, nag-heads up sila tungkol sa misinformation na kumakalat kaugnay sa COVID-19. Yeah. Pinapaborito ko daw talaga dyan yung papaya na nag-positive daw sa COVID. Yeah. Ito pa yung... Yeah. Alam ko balak ni Ariel na gumawa kami ng ganyang video. Yeah. Pero yung ganito, ang laking tulong niya, no, nung time ng pandemic kasi nakapagpapagaan siya, no? Hindi siya, dahil sobrang bigat ng mga balita nung panahon na yon. Napakalaking bagay yung mga sinasubmit na ganito ng mga tao. And it's also a way of paying tribute to the frontliners. Tapos may mga ganyang call out, paano kayo nagpapalipas ng oras nyo ngayong ECQ, or ganito, paano binago ng pandemya ang buhay ninyo. Hello, Spider-Man. So, ano yung mga roles ng citizen journalist kayong vis-a-vis the pandemic? So, una, magbigay ng impormasyon tungkol sa sitwasyon sa kanilang mga barangay, tumulong sa pag-monitor, no, ng compliance sa health protocols. Tapos labanan yung disinformation, misinformation, may kaugnayan sa COVID. Medyo talagang delikado yun kasi usapin siya ng buhay at kamatayan. No? Meron yung nagsabi na kapag mapipigilan mo yung hininga mo ng 10 segundo, okay ka na, hindi ka tatabla ng COVID. So yung mga ganun, sobrang delikado siya.
Indispensable kunyari.
Tapos, sharing relevant information with friends, helping each other cope by providing inspiring stories of resilience tulad nung sayaw, at iba pa, no, yung video ng mga nadi-discharge sa hospital. Tapos, basically, giving people a voice. And kapag may crisis na hinaharap, mas lalong mahalaga na meron kang platform na nagbibigay pagkakataon sa mga tao na ilabas nila yung kanilang saloobin. So yun yung isang napakagandang role, no, ng citizen journalism. Pero bago ako mag-end, gusto kong sabihin na yung citizen journalism is still journalism. Hindi siya nangangalulga na sasabihin natin, hindi naman kasi sila nag-train, no, ng journalism, hindi sila nag-graduate. Hindi yun dahilan, no? And I think kapag ka yung bahagi ng citizen journalism program, yung pagtuturo ng ano yung journalism, paano yung fair and accurate reporting, actually, tinuturuan din natin sila ng paano labanan yung fake news, no, yung disinformation. Kasi yung paano maging mahusay na journalist ay ito rin yung mga prinsipyo at mga katangian na kailangan mo para mas maging resilient, no? Mas maging matibay at hindi ka maloko ng mga disinformation o yung laging tinatawag na fake news. So again, citizen journalism is still journalism. At yung siguro banggitin ko na rin, yung safety, no, at least yung the way we do it sa Bayan May Patrol mo, yung safety yung pinakamahalaga. At sinasabi namin lagi sa mga bayan patrollers na kapag ka masyadong delikado o kaya susuong kayo sa baha, sa malalim na tubig para makuhanan niyo yung isang bahay na bumagsak, wag na kasi baka magkasakit kayo, baka may sugat ka pa, magkaroon ka leptospirosis. So, safety and well-being yung pangunahing konsiderasyon, no? Hindi natin pinagpapalit yung kaligtasan para lang sa isang storya. So, yun po. Maraming salamat. Ay, sorry, si Spider-Man. Bakit si Spider-Man? Kasi, ayan, sinabi niya, no, with great power comes great responsibility. And citizen journalism, merong responsibilidad, no? So, doon papasok yung sinasabi ko kanina na it's still journalism. And part of that responsibility is following the principles, no, na sinasabi natin para sa mahusay na pagbabalita. So yung accuracy, yung fairness, yung balance, lahat yon dapat kasama pa rin siya dun sa tinataguyod natin sa citizen journalism. Kaya si Spider-Man. Pero hindi si Spider-Man ang nagsabi nito, si Uncle Ben. Pero sa huling pelikula, hindi na raw si Uncle Ben ang nagsabi.
Aunt May.
Si Aunt May na. At talagang inunahan kayo ni Joyce. So, maraming salamat. Maraming salamat din kay Spider-Man. Maraming salamat lahat ng nag-abang kay Spider-Man.
Yes, at nag-abang sa'yo.
Oo. Actually, si Spider-Man is one of two superheroes na ang background po or ang trabaho ay bilang isang journalist. Of course, the other one is Superman. Clark Kent as a photographer, di ba?
Yeah.
Siya isang photojournalist din. So kung may questions kayo for Weng, please hold on to your questions or drop them now sa chat box and we will ask them later sa ating second Q&A. Magkarugtong po talaga ang sessions 3 and 4. At ang ating last session will be handled by Mr. Francis Angelo. He's here already. I think he's the editor-in-chief of the Daily Guardian and he will be doing a mini workshop on fighting through decay. Hi Francis, good afternoon.
Hello,
Francis. Yes, Miss Joyce, Miss Weng, Sir Ariel, may hapon. Maulang hapon. Yeah,
maulan din sa inyo?
Opo,
maulan din?
Opo.
Decay ngayon, so talagang everyone affected daw.
Oo, all over the Philippines.
Yes, medyo happy kami mga labandero this weekend. Wala kaming gagawin. Anyway, magpapasalamat din po ako kay Spider-Man kasi nga listening po tayo lahat. Kay Miss Weng, salamat din po for keeping them awake. Let me just share po yung ating presentation for this afternoon. Yes, magkarugtong po itong aming topic ni Miss Weng and my discussion as well. Kasi nga with the, sa pagdami ng mga user-generated content at mga users who actually spread information, hindi maiwasan na may disinformation na nangyayari or kumakalat na rin. So we will discuss this afternoon. How do we actually fight truth decay through fact-checking? How do we discern or determine which is fact factual information or which is fake or disinformation. So let's start first with some sort of game para at least tuloy-tuloy yung gising natin yung ulan hapon. Ano to? It's a game of true or false. Let's see kung may papakita ko mga slides I will ask for your help to determine kung totoo o hindi ang mga information na lalabas sa susunod na slide. First slide would be isa daw teenager na binatawan ng 100 British pound na fine, penalty dahil nagkalat siya sa isang lugar while nagpapakain ng mga ibon. Is this true or false, diba? Maybe you can drop your answers sa ating chat box kung ito ay true or false. Siyempre alam ko na ang sagot, so hindi ko muna sasabihin. So, may sasagot ba? True or false? Totoo ba ito o hindi?
Hindi po kailangang mag-research.
Yeah.
The first answer that comes to your mind, just looking at the photos.
Top of the mind.
Ayan, true. Sige pa, some more answers please. Yung mga resource persons, bawal. True. Madaming true, Francis and Joyce.
Halos lahat. Majority, I think.
Yeah,
yes,
majority.
actually, this is true. This actually happened Swansea, somewhere in the UK, because in their area, may rules sila na, yes, you can feed the birds, pwede kayong magpakain ng mga ibon, but bawal magkalat or yung papakain, kung ano man yun, breadcrumbs man yun, or seeds, whatever, dapat ingatan na hindi magkalat. So the consequence is the court fined this dalaga, si Lauren Page Smith, 100 pounds for littering. Okay. Sa papo, okay, ito. Is this true or false? Camellia, kalahati na lang ng katawan niya ang naiwan pero buhay pa din. Is this true or false? Maniniwala ba kayo sa balitang ito?
Puro true ang sagot.
Okay. Nagpapabisto at ako. May
May isang false.
May true. Isang false, may true.
True. Meron isang true. H-R-U-E, di ba? True. Meron isang false, Joyce. True.
Isa lang yung false.
Yeah, isa lang.
Yeah.
Oo.
Yan lang ang peperong yun natin. Hindi. Actually, this is false. It's a manipulated image. Fabricated lang po ito. So of course, wala namang camel siguro or any other animal na pagkalahati na lang ng katawan mo ang naiwan ay buhay ka pa. So Photoshop po ito at this has been debunked. Hindi totoo. Next slide. Ito. Sa buwan daw or sa moon, ang National Aeronautics and Space Administration ng United States ay nag-i-install na ng internet facility sa buwan. Totoo ba ito o hindi? True or false? Pwede na tayong mag-ML. Pwede na rin mag-zoom sa moon. Kung paniniwalaan itong balita na ito. Right? Okay. May false. Maraming false. May isang true, may nakita ako sa true, o may isang dalawa, tatlo. Right?
May false, parang
mas
madami ang false. Oo, majority.
Well, magugulat kayo because it's actually true. NASA and Nokia, yung dati nating paboritong brand ng telepono, are actually working together to put up a 4G network sa buwan. And these facilities, itong mga internet or 4G network na ito, is actually very useful in transmitting yung mga images o larawan nakuha ng mga deep space telescopes like the Hubble telescope and some other probes. Dito nire-relay yung mga signals saka yung mga pictures nakuha nila from deep space. So yes, pwede tayong mag-Mobile Legends sa buwan dahil may internet na doon. at pwede nyo mag-Zoom. Yan ay kung makakaabot tayo sa kwan. Ito pa, na isa daw mama na humingi ng tulong sa mga authorities o sa mga police kasi nga hinahabol daw siya ng cute na squirrel. Sa Germany ito. So, totoo ba ito o hindi? True or false?
Tingin. Okay, we're checking on your answers.
False.
False. True. False. True. True. False. False. Parang hati, Franz.
Hati. Oo. Partida.
Oo.
Sige. Oo. Actually, this is true. At yan yung squirrel, cute na cute. Na mismo siya napagod na rin sa kakahabol dun sa mama. Siguro gusto lang kung saan iligay nun pa magpaangga yung naglalambing. Pero kasi nga yung mama may phobia sa mga hayop. Takot na takot kaya humingi siya ng tulong dun sa German police. Kasi akala natin terrorize siya ng baby squirrel na sobrang cute na animal. So, if you observe, parang when you gave your top of the mind answers dun sa mga slides na yun, maybe one way or another you felt that your biases came in. And when we are bombarded with a lot of information, ang tendency is to filter the information based on what we already know or kung ano yung nakasanayan natin katotohanan or information. So that's what we call the availability heuristic or availability bias na we rely on immediate examples of what comes to mind kung gusto na kung hinihimay-himay natin or examine topic, concept, or methods of decisions. It operates in the notion na kung isang bagay na pumapasok sa isip natin agad-agad, it must be important or at least more important doon sa what is pinapakita sa atin o yung alternative view or idea. Then we also have, alam mo natin yung existing belief system natin. Sometimes we tend to ignore details that contradict our own beliefs. For example, yung tinatawag natin confirmation bias. Our tendency to look for set of facts, someone or somebody who will back up or confirm our biases. It is strongest, ang confirmation bias is strongest when dealing with emotionally charged issues. Alam mo na yung eleksyon. Tingin lang kayo sa Facebook. Supporters of every candidate, they have their own sets of facts and beliefs to back up their biases or support for a particular candidate. Then, authority bias. Ito, nasanay tayo sa mga in our respective families na yung mga matatanda, yung mga ating mga elders dito sa amin, pag nagsasalita yung matatanda, kahilig lang yung mga bata, kikinig ka lang. Bawal kang sumama sa usapan kung hindi ka kinakausap o pinagsasabihan anong masasabi. So yan ang authority bias. It's a tendency to attribute greater accuracy and binibigyan natin ng mas mabigat na credence yung opinion ng isang authority figure. Parents or experts or kahit politiko, lalo na sa reporting. So nowadays, you can observe that when you ask parents na kung lumaan yung martial law, parents have their own differing views on martial law, and these differing views are sometimes transmitted to the younger generation, and sometimes the younger generation out of the parents to the elderly and out of authority bias naniniwala kung anong sinasabi ng mga matatanda o nauna na sa atin. Now, along this line, maraming lumalabas na categories of information disorder. We're confused, hindi natin alam kung anong paniniwalaan, alin. So number one is, one category is misinformation. That's maling informasyon na pinapakalat na wala namang intensyon na manakit o mag-damage on somebody's reputation. For example, ngayon, maulan ngayon. In fact, buong Pilipinas parang maulan. And before the pandemic, pag maulan, lalo na pag may bagyo, ratsada na yung announcement ng mga LGUs at saka ng DepEd on suspension of classes. Now, minsan, may mag-share ng code card or sa social media o announcement na walang klase, walang pasok. Pero when in fact, kung i-double check, yung palang code card na yun or advisory is luma na, maybe a year ago pa, pero na-share. Nagkulang lang talaga yung nag-share ng a bit of scrutiny to check kung bago yun o luma, then na-share, but wala namang intensyon na makasama. Talagang kinulang lang sa scrutiny. So that's misinformation. Now, this information is maling informasyon, maling balita, then na-share deliberately, talagang tinangkang i-share, at may intention to cause harm. So, yan yung lumalabas ngayon. Mostly disinformation. Si ganito daw, may ninakaw, si ganito daw, may mental health problem na wala namang factual basis pero pinapakalat niya to damage someone. Now, the worst actually in these three categories would be malinformation. Ito, totoong impormasyon na pinakalat with intent to cause harm. So, recently dito sa Iloilo may nahuling isang sextortionist. Yung ex-girlfriend niya, binantaan niyang ikakalat yung sex video niya kung hindi siya magbabayad ng pera. At yun, so sextortion. So that's one form of malinformation na totoo yung material. You have a video, a photo na talagang nangyari that puts someone in a bad light na ikakalat mo with the intent to cause harm or take advantage of someone. So that's malinformation. So dito, we have a sort of a Venn diagram sa categories of disinformation. Misinformation is just about falseness, wala naman siyang intent to cause harm. Disinformation has both elements, falseness, then intent to cause harm. But malinformation is really damaging because of the single-minded purpose of putting someone in harm or damaging a person. Now, fake news is not even enough to cover everything or discuss ang problema natin sa disinformation. Because most content are not even fake, totoo sila. Oftentimes, nagagamit lang itong mga genuine content at na-weaponize o nagiging sandata magpakalat ng mali, twisted or maling informasyon para mapasama yung ibang tao. So, ang labas ngayon, ang mga tao sa likod ng disinformation, they have learned that using genuine content, totoong content, na ni-reframe, i-twist siya in something new and misleading ways, is more likely to deceive people. Lalo na pag medyo impressionable ka sa internet. Pag nakita mo sa internet, akala mo totoo na. Pag nakita mo sa Facebook na kumakalat, maraming nag-share, maraming nagko-comment, akala natin totoo na. Now, tulad nito, this one instance, may bata daw na pinakulong because of immigration problems. I think this is in the US. This is an example of false context. That picture is actually genuine, totoo siya. But this is a dramatization or parang protest action. A group of protesters na they post for photos na kunwari nakulong sila to dramatize their complaints or concerns about immigration laws. Pero someone actually used this photo, pinokos yung bata na parang nasa likod ng rehas o nasa loob ng cage, tapos nilagyan ng caption na this is what happens. The government believes that people are illegal. Kids in cages. So, iniba yung context para to dramatize something. But when in fact, this is just a dramatization or form of protest, ang original intent ng picture ng naipalabas ito. And then, meron din tayong mga impostor content o yung mga nagpapanggap na kunwari sila ay mga genuine or credible news organizations. For one, dito sa may upper left, Kita nyo ang logo niya parang BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation. Akala mo totoo, talagang genuine yung logo. Then you also have nagkukunwari na news organization when in fact they are organizations identified with one party or one group. In the US, marami itong mga nag-uusbong na mga kunwari daw news websites na are actually run by consultants or people affiliated with another party. They pose to be like news organizations, parang credible din, but when in fact if we look deeper into their background, they are actually leaning to one particular party because of the people operating or maintaining these news websites or social media platforms. Ito pa, manipulated content, Photoshop, uso-uso yun ito. Ito sa upper left na picture, makikita natin may mga taong nakapila, tapos dito medyo sa foreground, sa kanan, merong police, ICE, I think this is someone from immigration, na may hinuhuling mama in nakaputing t-shirt, pinupusasan niya with his hands behind him. Parang totoo, no? But if you analyze this, actually these are two photos, composite, na pinagsama to make it look like this picture sa taas. Yes, there is a picture ng mga taong bumuboto or trying to vote, nakapila sila. That's a separate photo. That's another photo. Pero meron din isa ding photo ng mamang hinuhuli. Separate photo din yun. Pero ang ginawa dito, genuine materials that were combined, amalgamated to create a new material and, present it in another light. Police daw, may hinuhuli mga tao habang bumuboto. This is manipulated content. This is malinformation using genuine content to spread damaging or deceiving materials or context. Now, kung ako or let's say one of us wants to be go into the business of fake news, anong gagawin natin? So let's play some sort of game on how bad news purveyors or agents evolve. So we're here to become a fake news tycoon. So let's see, what do we do para maging fake news tycoon tayo? So probably frustrated, galit tayo sa isang bagay. So lahat naman tayo, may mga rants, may mga concerns. So kung tayo sa Twitter, doon tayo mag-vent sa Twitter. So we post something like maybe we post something frustrating or angry sentiment against the government. This government is a loser and utter failure. #resign losers. So tweet natin yan. Tingnan nyo sa taas. Dito sa upper right, followers, 0 pa lang. Then credibility natin medyo mababa pa. Hindi pa naman kalahati. So let's post that. Anong mangyayari? Ano kayang magre-react ba? So, pwede kong mag-post. Pag-post mo nun, you have 8 followers. Pero yung credibility natin, hindi pa mataas. We have to get some real influence. We'll have to raise our credibility. So how do we do it? So maybe yung constructive criticism will get you a few followers. And the more you criticize, maybe the more followers you will get, the more influence you will have. So pwedeng manghiram tayo ng identity ng iba. Na nakawin natin yung identity ng mga sikat na tao na every time he or she speaks, may bigat, may credibility. So, anong gagawin natin? Pwede tayong mag-impersonate or gumawa ng fake Twitter account. For example, Joe Biden, 46th President of the United States of America. So, popost natin yan. Tayo yung fake account din. Well, obviously, this is a fake account. And we will post as Joe Biden. So, maglalagay tayo sa Twitter. As your president, I have issued an executive order to rename Canada to North Dakota. You got annexed by surprising ito. In-annex ng US ang Canada. Ginawang new state o bagong state ng Amerika na ang pangalan is North Dakota. So, yung ginawa mong pag-a-annex na sa Canada will really now get traction, and a lot of people will now take notice dun sa account na to. But if you look at it, we examine ang spelling ng Biden, yung letter N niya is N-E. Then yung president, yung letter E is something strange. The same with letter U in the United States, etc., etc. So may mga telltale signs na this account is actually not the account of the genuine president, but an impostor. So, ayan, dumami na yung followers dito sa taas, unti-unti. Tsaka yung credibility meter, gumagalaw na rin. So, maraming nagre-react. Oh my God, may nagagalit. Baliw na ba si Joe Biden, ba't yung inanex yung Canada? Pero may isa dyan mag-a-agree. So, habang tumatagal, dumarami yung followers, saka yung credibility, unti-unti, tumataas. Okay. Anong feeling ngayon? So parang okay, dumadami yung followers kasi ngayon 61 na, kanina 0 pa yan. Ngayon may 61 followers na. But hindi naman forever yung mag-imitate ka lang o mag-impostor ka lang ng isang tao. So anong gagawin natin? So maybe we can start a news site or a blog. Doon natin ibuhos lahat yung gusto natin isabihin or ipalaganap. So we create the Cosmos Post na as our news platform. And ano kaya magiging job title natin? Ako, for example, siguro pwedeng editor-in-chief, etc. or CEO. But we still need a very catchy slogan for the Cosmos Post. So pwedeng ito, now, online, the Cosmos Post, bursting the mainstream media bubble. So purpose daw ni the Cosmos Post is to debunk whatever reports or opinion that the mainstream media spreads around. So, ayan. Meron na tayong news platform. And this will now become the foundation of our fake news empire. Kasi nga, marami na tayong followers. Kanina 0, 50 plus, 60 plus. Ngayon, nasa 124 na. At saka yung credibility meter, unti-unting gumagalaw, tumataas. So, impersonation, kanina, we're just one angry person. Ngayon, editor-in-chief na tayo ng isang news site. That's how agents of disinformation actually evolve. Sa pasimpleng tao lang na nagrarant sa social media, later on, dumami yung followers, naging influencer, at ngayon ay nagpapanggap na kunwari agent or genuine news organization or personality. Now, ayon sa pag-aaral ng Oxford in 2019, and I think this has been updated siguro, there's evidence of organized social media manipulation campaigns in 70 countries, which is more than the 48 countries in 2018 and 28 in 2017. And obviously, social media has been co-opted by many authoritarian regimes. Magagamit na siya. In 26 countries daw, computational propaganda is being used as tool of information control in 3 distinct ways. Number 1, suppress fundamental rights, then discredit political opponents, and drown out dissenting opinions. Very familiar situations, lalo na sa Pilipinas. Ang dami ngayon ito ng ganitong pangyayari. And kahit umusbong ang maraming social media platforms, Facebook is still the choice for social media manipulation. And alam naman natin sa Russia, when Russia attacked or invaded the Ukraine, yung mga social media sites doon were shut down kasi nga the government, Russian government, does not want adverse reports about his invasion to spread among its people. So that's the suppression of information sa social media. Although in some other countries, they have been very effective in using social media against their opponents and in suppressing human rights. Now, anong consequence ng information disorder? disinformation and malinformation. Number one, erosion of trust in journalism and journalism. Yan ngayon ang isang problema natin. Nawawala na ng tiwala yung mga tao sa journalism and journalists because mas pervasive, mas kumakalat yung misinformation. The loss of distinction between truth and lies, hindi na natin alam kung anong totoo, sino ang paniniwalaan. And it undermines the importance of press freedom and freedom of expression. When in fact, yung mga nag-i-spread ng disinformation, they also benefit from the ideas of press freedom and freedom of expression. It's just that we-weaponize lang ito to suppress other people's right and determination to speak the truth. Then of course, malicious targeting of critics. Lalo na red tagging, even journalists are also being maligned or criticized or even threatened in social media. Now, this information is nothing new, but tagal na to, but only that technology has hastened its spread and elections and crises, katulad ng mga pandemics, have been weaponized to clamp down in dissent while supporting state-sponsored disinformation and trolls. Sa Pilipinas, alam na natin yan. It's a very real issue. It's been discussed in public and yung iba nga, walang pakundangan, yung impunity na ginagamit ng social media to in weaponize disinformation. So, katulad nito, Joseph Stalin, dati, yung hepe ng kanyang secret police, very best friend niya. But later on, nung nagka-problema, kasi praning din itong si Joseph Stalin, pinapatay niya yung kanyang head ng secret police na si Nikolai Yasov. Pero hindi lang physically pinapatay. Even the existence of Yasov in history, like in this photograph, binura ni Joseph Stalin. So parang pina-photoshop niya, binura niya si Yasov sa mga pictures nila. Just to, delete the guy all throughout. Hindi lang in the physical world, but even in history, in photos. So ganyan kalala ang disinformation, especially when it's weaponized. So, fact-checking tayo. How do we do fact-checking para kung if we encounter information, how do we verify yung katotohanan? So, when you check the URL, yun yung address bar sa mga internet browser natin. There are ways to do that. Then we do vertical and lateral reading. We use search operators, do reverse image search, then check the metadata of our photos and follow fact-checking websites. Now, if you want to check the URL or address or identity ng isang website, you can use lookup or lookup.ican.org. So lalagay nyo lang dyan sa my search field dito yung domain name or internet number resource, and then mag-return niya ng information kung anong background ng website. Example, cnn.com. Yan ang isa-search natin. So the information will actually yield the following details: registrant, domain name manager, sino may-ari, anong contact details, and even the address. And the same din sa technical. So they have complete details pag ginamit mo yung lookup, yung ICANN, not na portal. So what if we use something like cnn.com.net.ph? Ano kaya ang magiging data na lalabas? Well, dito sa baba, no registry RDAP server was identified for this domain, attempting lookup using PPI service. So there's a problem with this URL because hindi siya nag-exist. So that's one way of checking URLs para malaman natin kung sino ang mga tao or corporations behind a particular site. Now, you can always use Google search operators. For example, if you want to research for Rodrigo Duterte, it will give you like 10,200,000 results about Rodrigo Duterte, everything under the sun, news stories, Wikipedia, etc., etc. So that's mabigat yan. So we need to narrow down that ang research entries natin. So we can do Rodrigo Duterte, Sara Duterte na keywords. And from 10 million, naging 2 million na lang results. But still, marami pa din yan. Hindi mo mauubos masahin yan. So we can still narrow it down, refine the search more using conjunctions like Rodrigo Duterte and Sara Duterte. So less than 1 million na lang yung results. But Do you think you can read all 134,000 results? Malabo yan. So, you can only sift through a fraction of this information. But to narrow it down more, you can use keywords as apart from the topic or the name of the topic or name of the person. So, for example, Rodrigo Duterte, in quotation marks, killed them all. So, nananarrow down, we only have 12,800 results na lalabas pertaining to that particular keyword and race. Or you can also search by file type. So if you want, for example, if you want to look for academic studies about Rodrigo Duterte, you add the phrase file type :PDF. And usually ang lalabas dyan mga PDF files on academic studies about Rodrigo Duterte, his politics, his governance, his background, at kung ano pa. Now, here, kita nyo, picture, madugong picture na inilabas daw sa CNN, breaking news pa. Ang caption, nag-lockdown ang isang hospital, naka-lockdown kasi nga ang first COVID vaccine patients, yung mga COVID patients na namakunahan, naging zombie, kinain yung ibang pasyente. Pero, if we go deeper, if we investigate the picture, this picture actually first came out in 2019 in the New York Times. So before pandemic pa. The picture is actually a trauma bay ng isang emergency department sa Temple University Hospital where someone died despite efforts to resuscitate the patient. So, ang ginawa, manipulated picture, babalik tayo na, manipulated picture, ginawa ng caption about COVID patients na naging zombie, nilagyan ng CNN logo, etc., etc., may ticker pa sa baba. So this is manipulated, this is a manipulated image to, spread disinformation about vaccines in the middle of the pandemic. Now, ito pa, parang pandemic din, mass grave daw ito, Poland daw, mass grave ng mga COVID-19 fatalities. Again, if you do research, gagamitin mo yung image search or reverse image search ng Google. Lalagay mo yung image yan, ita-drag mo lang, lalagay mo lang dito sa field, dito sa baba. The result would be, that particular picture was actually a scene from the movie Contagion, which is also about a pandemic. Years back, 2011 pa ito ata. But it's not COVID related. So, again, ginamit lang yung picture to highlight mass graves daw in a place when in fact it's not true. It's just a scene from a movie more than a decade ago before the pandemic. Ito, pictures like this will typically lead you to believe that it's in Asia kasi may lanterns, may snow, etc., etc. So, but we still have to determine kung saan nga ba ito, Korea, Japan, or what. So, we can use metadata to go to check the metadata or the information behind the picture. It's the same din dun sa may Google image search. And if we do that using metadata to go.com, we will get this information about this picture. So ito, it's a photo by Agence France Press, a data set that's in 2022. The object name is China Weather Snow. And the caption is, picture daw ito ng isang lalaki o tao na naglalakad sa Jinshan Park sa Beijing, China on January 20, 2022. At ang photographer is Jade Gao ng Agence France Press. Now, ito pa, repurpose materials to deceive. Meron daw nung start yung national election campaign noong February 8, may labas ng mga videos or images in the internet na may pinakamalaking rally daw yung isang kandidato. Doon sa may Philippine Arena, sa may Bulacan. Ito ang picture, marami daw ang crowd. When in fact, upon verification using YouTube and other sites, this particular image sa may X sa kaliwa is actually part of a footage ng inauguration ng Philippine Arena din, but during the time of the late President Noynoy Aquino. So manipulated yung image just to attribute it to another candidate in 2022 when in fact the image is part of a scene sometime pa, tagal na to, 2014 pa during the inauguration ng Philippine Arena. So, some materials are being repurposed to deceive. Again, this is malinformation. Then, if we really want to be sure about, I want to check ang veracity ng mga information na nakukuha natin, we can go to fact-checking website like Verifiles, check.ph, and even the Facts First PH campaign, several media organizations. Then we can also use investigation tools. One I encountered is the Essentials. They have a lot of tools, to verify pictures and information, etc. They have something for Facebook, YouTube, map tools, Twitter, Instagram, and even image search. So, lahat tayo pwedeng mag-express ng opinion natin. But not to our own facts, because facts should always be verified. Facts should always be based on what is true, what has been researched and carefully reviewed by authorities or even in journalism. So salamat po, and we'll proceed to our open forum. I hope gising pa tayong lahat. Salamat po at magandang gabi.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you, and we call back Ms. Wen Paraan for our second Q&A. I hope you learned a lot from our mini workshop. Ang purpose po talaga nito is not to tell you which is true, which is false, but to equip you with the knowledge, to give you a vaccine, if you want that analogy, against disinformation and misinformation. Diba iba pa rin kapag tayo mismo yung mag-fact check ng bagay na pinipresenta sa atin. Siguro while waiting for our questions, simulan ko lang kay Weng. Usually ito yung concern ng mga audience natin. Pag ba may nagpadala sa inyo ng materyales, do you still vet it? Does it undergo fact checking? And paano kung merong mga perennially mali o false yung information na pinifeed sa bayan mo, patrol mo?
Definitely, dumadaan pa siya sa fact-checking. In fact, knowing that the materials are coming from people who are not really trained to fact-check, mas mahigpit talaga yung verification process. Sa EBS, we have a team, yung isang buong unit na ang trabaho really is to verify materials being sent by bayan patrollers. Yung tanong mo tungkol dun sa kung merong perennially nagpapadala, wala naman. Sasakalin ko siya pag merong ganon. Meron kaming...
Weng chooses violence.
Well, lang. Merong instance na may nagpadala tapos minsan may mali silang data, pero alam mo hindi siya minamali. Yung hindi siya sinasadyang mali. And that's why also you always need to verify. Kasi kuminsan kahit oras, diba? Nalilito kailan po ninyo kinuhanan? Kasi kung bagyo yan, napaka-importante kung kailan kinuhanan. Kasi mamaya hindi na relevant kasi yung baha pala kahapon pa. So kung ipapublish mo siya, kailangan malinaw na kahapon pa yan. Hindi pwede